Sean Capri, and welcome to We the GamerCast. It publishes every single Monday right here at youtube.com/Carpool Gaming and our podcast services on planet Earth. Thank you so much for being here and telling your mom, for telling your dad, for telling your friends, and everybody that you know. Goodness gracious, we've got a great one here for you. The very last episode of 2022. We'll be back in 2023. I just need to take a breath there. I screamed a lot. That was all. Was that on one breath? We should count. We should check a look. By the way, patrons get it first, and this is a good one, you guys. I'm very proud of this episode. I'm proud of everything that we do, and I run into this every single week with every new episode. I'm proud. I can't wait to get it out. I can't wait for you to hear it, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself because if you're new, here's the deal. Every week I have sweet hangs with a stranger from the internet. And if you want to be on the show, you can tweet at me at Sean Capri. Sean like Connery, Capri like the pants. I was thinking midway through there, unless you want to be on the show next week, there's no show next week. we're taking a break. We're doing the thing. It's Christmas holidays. Well, I do Christmas holiday. And so I'm taking some time off, of work. And then we've got, I think what we'll do, so that you at least have something to listen to next week is we recorded, our game of the year with all the Carpool Gaming hosts, and it was amazing. We had everybody involved. And so I'm excited for you guys to listen to that. And it's going to go up on all the different podcast feeds, the Xbox Drive, PlayStation Drive, Nintendo Drive, RPG Cave, We the GamerCast. I think that's all. Suddenly when I list like the 5 shows that we do, I'm like, that doesn't seem like a lot. Like everybody says, you guys do so many podcasts. Is 5 a lot? There's a lot of us doing them. So there's that, but we've got big plans for 2023 and man, it's all powered by Patreon. We just do that. It's powered by patreon.com/Carpool Gaming. We couldn't do it without you. It doesn't happen without you. So I want to say a special thank you to all the 80 plus patrons over there, especially our ultimate producers, Robby Bobby Miller at twitch.tv/Robby Bobby Miller, Trucker Sloth, Tony Baker at Quest for Pixels, who's gallivanting and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say where people are. I hope you're having a great time where you are, Tony Baker. It is on social media, but whatever. YouTube.com/Quest for Pixels, Dallas Ford, the co-host of The Blame Game, Johnathan Brown, the new EP from PME is called Gems. You could download it on Apple Music and Spotify. Lee Navarro, the fearless leader of the Phoenix Overdrive Extra Life team. Last couple of days to get in for your PS5. Win a PS5, even if you have one. Be like Court Lawn. Have a mountain of them. Have a pile of PS5s. You'll figure out the space. So go to phoenixoverdrive.com for that. I just about got distracted, but I want to say thank you to Marcus McCracken and RJ Kern, our platinum producers, and our gold members. Anna, Cecily Carrozza, Dallas Robbins, Drellesh, who's my guest today, Emily O'Kelly, Foolish Fuji, Jonas Young, Jose Jimenez, Marcus O'Neill, and Skinny Matt. I'm a little excited. I'm very rested. I think that's one of the things I will tell you guys today. And I likely will be fairly rested for the rest of 2022. That's my goal. That's my hope. I'm hoping to come back into 2023 with just a stupid amount of energy. I'm very excited. I'm not even that caffeinated right now. What is even happening? Oh my goodness gracious. There's so much. And I don't even know exactly where to start because this episode with Drellesh, as you've seen by the title of the episode, some of you know Drellesh, a wonderful member of the community, a pillar, some might say. Especially in the Backtrackers, our video game book club, which him and I did not discuss. And I know, Drellesh, that you don't like that I call it a book club, but that's what people understand it. You know what I mean? You understand what a book club is. So that's until I hear something different, something better, then I'm just going to run with the book club. And over the weekend, we chatted about the return to Monkey Island, the game that I picked. And it was very interesting to dive into the various kind of elements about that game, whether point and click adventure games are for everybody or not. There was a deeper conversation that came out there and it's not published. That's the thing. You guys, if you're not part of the Backtrackers and you enjoy this, I'm telling you, you're going to love the Backtrackers. So get on in there. But this conversation, I wanted to leave, Drellesh and I we DM each other throughout the year, a few times a week, I would say. And I knew basically from the moment he joined the community, like, man, I'm going to have at least a couple hours with this guy and, pick his brain a little bit. And you're going to notice in this chat, like he is acting in service of me, and I feel so grateful for that. We have a wonderfully deep conversation that starts, I would say, on the surface of content creation. And maybe if you're just kind of like casually listening, that might be what it sounds like the entire time. But every topic that we discuss here I think just speaks to everything in life. And I took a lot out of this conversation. I felt a little bit selfish about it because generally speaking, I would say that I like to put the focus on the guest. So I tried to extract some stuff about and from Drellesh on this because I was feeling like I'm getting way too much out. I feel like I owe him some money or something. But in any case, I don't want to delay anymore because you know what? I feel everything I have to say is not nearly as important as what happens in this conversation. I really hope you enjoy it. It's a deep look into Carpool Gaming and leading a team. And there is some like kind of like management stuff in here, but I'm telling you guys, like there is stuff for everyone in this conversation. I really hope you enjoy it. I'm just going to go ahead and introduce them because I'll see you at the end of the episode. So please enjoy my conversation with Drellesh. I feel like I should change my background. I feel like I should be in some sort of mushroom planet of some sort.
Go for it. Do it.
Yeah, we should green screen the whole thing. Nice green screen for the last episode of the year.
My background is so... Oh, that looks good. My background is so boring. I like a bookshelf in a window, you know? So now let's
bookshelf is nice. What's wrong with the bookshelf? It's good.
I always come across like, oh boy, this man reads a lot. So,
well, let's see. Is this the same thing?
Right, let me see if I. Oh, there we go. We can do that. I think
we're the same.
Cool.
Yeah,
this is perfect. Yeah. Sean,
I like this a lot. I've never done this before.
This is I think a great end of the year background, right? So,
definitely. We take ourselves too seriously, you know. From time to time, I love. Even still, man, my video is something else. That's special. That's hilarious.
I'm glad we can do it over Discord though, so it
yes.
takes away all the technical thing that comes with it, the difficulty or boundaries that there might be. So this is cool.
There's always something, and I'm always thinking about like what is next. Like what other way there is to do it. Even Discord isn't. It's not perfect for my side of things, and I'm running into some issues. But we're always looking what's next and what's easy for people. So I don't know. But Zoom, I tried Zoom for maybe a couple episodes, and I thought that was going to be the easy one because it seemed like the world was going on Zoom, and it caused issues as well. So there's never a perfect solution to it. So
you're trying Teams at all, or
Teams is the one I actually ran into. I like Teams, but when I send it to other people, it's as troublesome as Skype. It seems.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah, it depends, but depending on what sort of computer you have, what sort of Windows.
Mm-hmm. That's just it. A lot of people are on Macs.
Yeah, there we go. Same. No? So you mean you have different functionality on the Mac than you have on a Windows PC, and there are certain functionalities that are absent. It also depends. Hey, what iOS update do you have on your Mac? And the list just continues. So I know.
Who knew connecting with people worldwide should be such a hassle, You would think that we'd be like pretty locked down on this, but I don't know. We'll keep changing, we keep adjusting.
How are you? How's your Sunday?
Sunday's just getting started. It is, as Ryan would say, it's very cold. It's like minus 20 or something, minus 30.
Oh shit.
So I just ran and got Chelsea her drink, and she likes a Diet Coke to start the day. So everybody knows me as the Diet Coke person. Coffee is really my drink of choice. Chelsea likes the Diet. That's how she starts her day. But I forgot it was World Cup this morning. I thought, are you? Do you follow? Are you like?
Yeah, I am. But I think the game is only in 4 hours. So,
no, it's now. It's halftime.
No ways. Is it earlier?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I thought it was I still have 4 hours before we can watch it.
Oh, yeah. No, there's a score and everything. Things are happening.
Give me a sec. I'm going to go quickly
I wasn't sure if you wanted me to spoil it or...
An update. No. I mean, at the end of the day, I would love for Messi to... I'm not sure when he's 35, I think, right? So he's
Isn't that amazing, too? These aging athletes reaching 35 years old. Gosh, that's a weird phase of life when you start to get older than the retirement age of major professional athletes. I don't like it.
But I mean, by that time, they need to have, earned the bulk of their income that they, if they decide not to do anything for the rest of their life, they're safe.
Yeah.
Right. That's the idea. But let me quickly just check my.
I'm sorry to drop
all good.
the ball.
Okay, Croatia, Wales. What sort of game is this? Wait 1 second.
You need to fast forward in the tournament bracket.
I think it's just giving me the old update for some reason.
It's amazing as the World Cup has gone on, though. Like you find, I'm reminded of this every 4 years, that there's people who really, really know about it and follow it and like soccer or football, and there's a lot of people who just don't give a damn, like not even remotely, like, which is sad. I adore soccer. But I also understand why people don't follow it. Like it's not like they say things that are completely I can't understand it, but it's too bad.
That's for me. Nice. For me, it's quite serious. I used to follow it so I can just see Argentina's leading by 2 goals.
Yes, Messi got a penalty kick.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Okay. I won't even tell my wife because she also wants to see it. But we're doing some stuff for our daughter's school because she got chosen to give her teacher a present. So we have like a specific cultural routine here that's before Christmas. People draw names, like almost like in a raffle, and whoever's name you draw, you actually have to organize a Christmas present. And so she got her favorite teacher. So
that's very sweet.
So Patricia, my wife, is making her a cup. She loves cats, and so there's like a meow cup with a little picture of a cat looking, from underneath the cup looking up. So she's making her that, and I think she will be distracted now. She knows that the game is on now, but it's okay. Then we can watch something else tonight. So,
one thing at a time. Okay. Yeah,
one thing at a time.
And it's funny because I actually think I've been trying to follow it, but life is busy and it's Christmas. Like the World Cup is never at Christmas. It's normally a wide open summer or whatever. And so I thought it was done. I saw this is me just scrolling through headlines on Twitter. I saw Croatia taking a team picture. I'm like, I guess Croatia won the World Cup. Like I thought it's done.
That was yesterday.
Semifinal or whatever it was, the 3rd place, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. 4th place, exactly.
So I jump on the Discord today and people are getting excited about this Argentina match. I'm like, oh, that makes way more sense. Like that, like nothing against Croatia, but that makes a lot more sense than France. I'm like, where would France and Argentina be today? Goodness gracious.
I lived in South America for 8 years, between the ages of I think 7 and 15.
Yeah.
And in South America, in a country called Chile, which is kind of neighbors to Argentina.
Of course, yeah.
We kind of know, the kind of sporting spirit that there is, almost like rugby. If you look at the Southern Hemisphere, right? South Africa, New Zealand, the All Blacks, Australia, it's kind of that similar way. And if you study, so I grew up studying South American history, which was interesting. So they have a very uneasy relationship towards Spain or the Spaniards per se, because they're kind of seen as the conquerors, right? The conquerors that came over to conquer South America and the legends of El Dorado and Incas and the Aztecs and where did all the gold go and blah blah blah. So it comes out of there, and so it's really fascinating. Also, if you just look at the history between Chile, which is this kind of long country next to Argentina, the border disputes that they've always throughout history moved the borders, right? So it's also 2 countries that don't really get on that well. Sport wise, it's more than just a game, right? So there's way more at stake at this stage, which is like, I don't know, pride and whatever wrongdoings were done throughout history. And so I grew up not the history is always written out of the perspective of the victor, right? And so you never really know what is the true story, right? Because you've been taught one story, but you don't know whether this is actually the real story. So and that's why I said, I really think that Messi, should get this as I think he's never won a World Cup for Argentina. Him being Argentinian, And I really think that he deserves it. I just don't think that Argentina deserves it. If you know.
Oh, okay. There's where we're going. Okay. Well, there's probably something to be said about probably every country. If you take it to that level on the World
France
Cup,
is the same. Exactly.
But that's why I think that's why the drama is so high and feelings and emotions like get right up there, because you're right, it's more than just soccer. And so for people over here, like especially Canada, I think maybe the US, I don't know if necessarily gets on that level. I shouldn't really speak for them, but yeah, there's a little bit more at stake on the world stage than we're kind of over here in the new world. So what do we know? We're detached from history. We wrote our own books.
Which in a way is great, right? It's, I think I always have the same feeling. I have quite a few friends. My ex-wife lives in Canada, so
oh wow,
she does something for Canadian television. Don't ask me.
Well, just like Ryan Turford. They probably work for the same place.
Probably.
They probably know each other.
Probably.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Like just this.
Then you would say it's a small world, right?
Holy cow! I say it all the time.
Who knows? Who knows? Who knows?
I mean, yeah.
But I think it's similar to me visiting Sweden. It's almost like you see, at least the first impression. Having lived in Europe now for almost 20 years, you almost come into a land that is not really touched by war the way that Europe has been. Right? And I don't know whether that really also applies to Canada.
Yeah, probably.
But I would think that, hey, there is a different spirit there because there are way more open spaces. There's way more, I don't know, there is I don't even know the right expression, but it's more like the discoverer slash, there are so many places in Canada that are not so densely populated. There is a much bigger connection to nature. When you said, let's meet at 11 o'clock mountain time, I'm kind of thinking, I've seen many mountains in the world. Now, what mountain is
We got it. We got the mountain time. That's pretty good. There's mountains all over the place. No,
what mountain is he referring to?
It's not even. We don't even have like the tallest mountains or most remarkable, really, at all. There's amazing mountains all over the place. Yep, that's us. I'd never thought of that before.
Oh, funny. I mean, for me, the greatest mountain is having lived in South Africa over 25 years. Table Mountain in Cape Town.
Oh, that is so cool.
So that is we made a trip when our shortly after our little one was born. Which when it was, I don't know, she was about 3. Just to have a look at, what does the world look like once you are on top of that mountain, and the vegetation is different. You only get vegetation that's available there in the whole world and nowhere else.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so you have a very different, connection to nature in the world out there. Then you can have a look at the various islands that are there. That you see there, what Nelson Mandela was imprisoned, right? So that's the kind of prison island that was there. It's amazing. So I think it's always good to try and first of all connect to nature, but then also connect to history, if you can through that. So
on the
I'm not sure when you're
recording. No, this is the whole thing. This is it. This is basically it. This is good. That's the classic. We have to have a bingo card. We're talking about bingo cards for next year. That maybe we'll give away that secret. It's interesting, like. I always find it interesting when I talk to people from around the world, and often you kind of get into like a stereotypical, like, give me this perspective like from this country, and I always think that that's a difficult thing for anyone to do, like speak on behalf of Germany or this country or that country, like, because I don't know how I would do that if I were asked a question about Canada. Canada is such a diverse place and it's enormous, but I will say on the kind of topic about whether or not our country is war torn or not in the same, I would say not in the same way as Europe, certainly, but very recently, within the last really like 2-3 years, we've been kind of grappling with our own history, how we've become Canada. And you don't get a country without conflict. Like, you don't get a society, civilization, or a newfound anything without any sort of conflict. So there's some very tough stuff that I think Canadians are coming to grips with, like what our past is. I think in North America, just in general, when we talk about Thanksgiving, we are all kind of aware, like, this is a weird one to celebrate, so it's tricky, but it's just not the same. It's not the same as being kind of the home base for a world conflict. It's not quite that. But yeah, there's a huge amount of space here. It's cold. We have the hilarious, stereotypes, but we have so much room. Like
that's amazing.
It is.
That's not the fact in Europe, right? Mm-hmm. Everything is kind of small. The streets are small.
Yep.
It's also a big difference, traveling in the States or traveling in Europe, right? So the first thing that you notice is like the streets are so narrow.
Yep.
Like you really have to drive carefully to make sure that your car doesn't get damaged. And this is a nation in Germany of, they take particular pride in what they drive.
Yeah.
Right. So we don't have like many secondhand cars here. When I say secondhand cars, yes, of course, there is a secondhand car market, but generally people try and buy because it is an important part of how they identify with to get the latest and greatest. And they're obviously also subsidized through the German government, right? So buying cars in Germany generally is cheaper than buying cars anywhere else in the world, right? So
buying cars is subsidized?
Yes, it is. Yes,
why is that part of the? Because it seems like a bit of an identity thing in Germany that like the best cars are made here. So is that just to keep the automakers just top of the world kind of thing?
Well, you always get a major trade-in price for the things that you for your previous car that you want to trade in. And it could be that is slowly but surely changing because. Generation Z, if you just talk about generations for a second, they are not that, focused on possessions per se. Mm-hmm. So like, for example, owning a car or owning a house or things like that is not something that makes them tick. And for us, I think we're probably going to experience a shift between, maybe my generation and maybe one generation that comes after me with regards to, having a car versus just mobility, right? Yeah. And how do you solve the mobility issues? And I think there we will see, I personally think we will see like a Spotify model, right? Where you actually, in the end, spend a subscription of some sort, where you can actually drive and pick the car that you choose depending on the level of subscription that you want to pay. So I think that's perhaps where it's moving to. I'm pretty sure it's moving in that way.
That would be fascinating. I never really thought of it that way. And the generational thing I think is interesting because there's going to be sometimes I think opinions and attitudes can be adjusted by the reality or perception of reality in terms of can you afford a car? Right, like I feel like I'm kind of in the middle of these two, and I hear this, everything's too expensive. I'll never be able to buy a house. I don't know if I've heard the same thing about cars. I feel like cars, generally speaking, at least here, like over the last 10 or 50, maybe even 20 years, like you can get an entry level car brand new for let's say $17,000 Canadian, something like that. I feel like that's been the same, like a Volkswagen Golf or a Toyota Corolla or just your, I don't know, there's probably, or a Yaris, I guess is kind of more base than that. But like that's, as far as a new car goes, I don't think I've seen that completely take off. Certainly not the way that houses have. They haven't really been in an investment market for that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because that narrative kind of takes off. I will never be able to afford this. And it's somehow in my mind, this is related to the laughable argument we're having online right now about wired versus Wi-Fi internet. It's like, what's a real obstacle and what are you just telling yourself? And that's, I think this gets into the heart of one of the things that I really wanted to talk to you about. It's just like motivation to get things done. And whether it's buying a car, buying a house, like you can face a reality of houses are expensive and you can go, I guess I'll just never have one. Or do you sit and figure out how much do you have to save over how much period of time? And maybe you just don't like that answer and then decide that you want to do it. But I just don't know that a lot of people do that part. Do you know what I mean?
I'm with you. I'm totally
do the
with
math.
You. I'm totally with you.
Yeah.
I think it's very difficult to start off in life with doing the math first.
Right. Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
That's very true. Yeah. It's not a natural thing. It's not a natural, like, you don't wake up and go like, okay, let me break this down into 40 chunks. That's just not the way that we live our lives. That's fair.
Exactly. And I think it so we'll go into a little bit of the thing that I do professionally, right? Which is to support people, and specifically people, because this is my target market, specifically people who are in leadership positions. How to make better choices, first of all, for themselves. So we're talking about, a leader has three things to focus on, regardless of what industry you're in. Point number one is your self-regulation. So how healthy am I now with regards to body, mind, right? That type of aspect that acts.
Yeah.
Point number B is also great. Point two would be to what extent have I, or can I define the influence that I want to have over the people that report to me? Right. So my team, what type of leader do I want to be there? And also to define what is our understanding of leadership, right? Because leadership encompasses many disciplines. One of them is management. That's perhaps the thing that we start with, right? And for me, management is working on a system to make sure that the system's bottlenecks, first of all, that the systems work well, the right people are doing the right things at the right time, but that the system per se is operating. And then the journey of leadership actually really starts, because once the system works, that is just your management task. The leadership task is now answering the question is, how can the system work without you?
Right. Nice. Yeah.
Okay. So it's the journey of being within the system to being on the system, right? Which means that, and here we are at the third point, how can I increase my effectiveness and my team effectiveness within the system that I'm at?
Yep.
Right, which is totally separate from me in my manager role, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
Right. So the first role really is taking care of, yes, the system must work. It must work without me, which means that I need to nominate or find, and this is not an easy thing, someone who succeeds me. Because only once that succession is found am I freed up to continue working on the system.
Right.
Otherwise, I remain the bottleneck, right? So, and I think this is what you're doing. I'm not sure you're doing it consciously, but you're doing it unconsciously at Carpool, right? The fact that you're bringing so many people on board, which in turn frees you up to create more things.
My secret is out. My secret is out in the open. That's exactly it. I'm glad that you see it, especially given your background. That's exactly it. Yeah. And it's definitely not unconscious. It's a purposeful.
It's a conscious decision.
But also there's an iteration of this that few people might remember or were a part of. There was another Patreon that Bobby and I, when Bobby was alive, he got divorced shortly before he passed. And then that kind of left me doing whatever I was doing. And so there's a version of this that didn't work nearly as well. And so there's a lot of lessons that got pulled out of that. And it's definitely a point of pride that we now have this that seems to be working. And we haven't had as large a group as we've had for very long. Seth and Lachlan are still quite new. And I think everybody's kind of finding their footing. But every once in a while, I'll get a message from, Seth or Cord or whoever it is. And it's like, this is totally working. Like somebody will come up to me and say, I just had this great conversation with so-and-so and like, this is a great idea. And it's like, that's all I want. Like,
I'm with you.
And it's this really interesting thing because sometimes it might come across like I've got a very specific way of doing things and a specific direction, which I think is good to have a direction and vision. But I do want everyone to come to the table with like their best ideas because everybody is just so smart. And the reason I get like really excited about it is because people are finding energy and enthusiasm and they're putting it all together. It's like, and that to your point about like, how can the system work without you? I'm like, I can actually back off. Like it's so relieving.
Absolutely. And I think I think, and here we really go into the task of leadership, right? The task of leadership really is, and I know that you enjoy podcasting, and I'm not saying don't do the interviews, right? Don't do the thing that we're doing here, but choose how you actually want to spend your time. And so we have, there are various studies, and Germany, how scientific Germany sometimes is. They say that you should actually really focus on entrepreneurial tasks.
Yeah.
And entrepreneurial tasks are very separate from specialist tasks.
Yep.
Very different from management tasks, right? So we make a clear division and categorization what those tasks are.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to come to the point, and because this is what you mentioned as well. Leadership in its core has a creative task. It's about creation and enabling co-creation.
Yep.
Right. And so what you're doing is, yes, I'm the leader, but I'm not the only one who says this is our North Star, this is the way that we should head, set your campuses on in this specific direction. But and I don't know whether that type of heroic leadership per se, right, that is still relevant today because of the realities that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
But you're actually allowing and making room so that co-creation can happen. And co-creation is meeting people specifically at eye level, regardless what their background is. And I think it's very important to hold them at eye level, if that makes any sense, so that their contribution, and I think this is one of the things that you do very well, is actually appreciated, is valued. And I think, there are many windows that you make available through Carpool where that is actually witnessed. And I know that we play with each other, and you sometimes say, "Oh, I hope that, when I take the mickey out of people, that they understand in what spirit it is meant."
Yep.
So not to take me literally here, but we're playing with each other so that something bigger can actually take shape.
Yep.
And I think that is really the task of leadership, is preparing for the future, for what doesn't exist yet, and it's answering the question, what wants to be born, and that is the task for you to bring into life.
Yeah.
The answer to that question, what is that which wants to be born at this stage?
Well, and
which I'm just assisting. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to jump in to say, like, these are things that aren't necessarily obvious to everyone, and I think that there's a lot of trickiness to. Leadership, certainly, like with Carpool, I think about this with my job. I think this as a parent as well. Like, there are certain things that you can't always like lay out your playbook immediately or as you're thinking. Like, sometimes you're just thinking ahead, and it might cause you to act or say things that like aren't completely understood in the moment. It's one of those, like, you'll understand when you're older, you'll thank me when you're older kind of thing. And not everything works out, and that's why, like, we're kind of like figuring things out a little bit as well. And that's the creativity side of things, that there's no book. I'm not like grabbing a product off a shelf and installing it. There's certain variables here that we're kind of navigating through. And that is super fun to me. I just think I wouldn't have sought it out originally, but now that we kind of find ourselves in these positions, it's like, this is very gratifying.
But, Sean, the fact that it's not perfect.
Totally.
That is actually the glue that makes humanness or the adhesiveness why we connect so well, right? I mean, no one wants to be connected to someone who's perfect.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, right? We all want to fail. Maybe that's exaggerated, but if we do fail, we need to be able to. I mean, in Germany, we have something like. I'm going to swear quickly, fuck up nights, right? Where everybody shares.
Did you listen to last week's episode? Don't worry about it.
True.
I think we're okay.
We're okay. Where everybody kind of shares shortly, where they failed. But there are lessons in there. There are lessons in the failing. And it's the question of, can we pick out what those lessons were and move forward? It doesn't mean that we will never do the same again, because there are many other factors at play, right? Were we too early? To what extent weren't we ripe as people to pull something through? In what way were we not perfect, or not ready, not mature enough to pull certain things through? So I think that's part of what you're developing, constructing in Carpool, for me, goes through a next stage, and that is really to surrender. And I think you've done that very well with Seth and with Lockleth, is to surrender that which you created, to kind of get feedback with regards to, does this fit, right? Or are we just another Nintendo podcast, as per se, right?
It's so funny you say that. We are. I'm so glad we're having this conversation. It's very uplifting, and I just feel like I'm going to float away at some point because it's just so. It fills my tank, man. It's so great because the Nintendo Drive is very top of mind ever since, and it has been, well, really the whole time, but certainly when Kato left, and it's like, what's the future of the show going to be, and turning it into a 3-person show. I have many thoughts on what the future of the show still is. Like, I don't think that we've reached our final form.
No, you haven't. It's the right steps. I don't think that. I think that's why I said surrender is important, right?
Good word.
And then ask yourselves again, what is that which wants to be born? Because there's certain elements of that which wants to be born present already, but we're not there yet. We don't have the full baby there yet. But we are in this birthing process, right?
Sometimes I feel like we're in a maze and like we're running along and we're like sure we've got the path. Like I know that this is totally made up. But then I reach a dead end. And it's hard because now I realize I've got to backtrack a little bit. I'm a little exhausted. I'm frustrated that there's this stopping point. But then I kind of like run back and discover something new along the way. And that's kind of where like Nintendo Drive is definitely that. It's okay, we're running and everything's great. And then slam. Kato's gone, and we've got to figure something else. We've got to backtrack a little bit here. And through that, the post show has been born, like there's all these different things.
Post show's great. It's almost,
thank you.
For me, it's even greater than the Nintendo show. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Well, it's like the shackles are off.
Well, I think that's one thing, but I think that I was thinking about this week, right? The fact that we're all doing our reviews and telling the ins and outs why a game might click with someone or not, or a specific target group or not. And for me, the most interesting part is not you guys telling us about the games, but for me, more interesting is, what do the games tell us about you, the way that you're reviewing them? Are you with me? So, so for me, it very much is, okay, we're getting a deeper insight into the specific characters that are talking about the games and what's important for them. And for me, that's way more exciting than listening what a game can do, yes or no. Right? But I mean, that's the way
totally
that I take, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, and Seth brings that to the very surface. Like he'll describe exactly that. Oh,
he's
you're not
such
kidding.
A gift.
You are
he's
not
a
kidding.
gift to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, when Kato had mentioned that she was going to be, parting ways, it was obvious, as tough a situation as that is, and I go through all the different phases of or whatever. Like I'm in denial for a very long time, and then all the sadness and the different stages. But even through all of those, Seth and Lockleth, like it wasn't even. I'm not even just saying it because, like I've told the same thing to them. They were immediately like right there, and I think part of it too is Seth particularly, and Lockleth too. Certainly, with like she was modding and stuff like that, but like they were already there. It's not like I had to go like, oh, who in the world could it possibly be, and I get sent into this tailspin. Like there's always someone, and even when somebody's sick, and there's always somebody kind of there, and that's the strength of the community just in general. It has nothing like less to do with like creation of content. It's more just the friendships and the relationships that have been made. You don't have to go put out an APB or a search or anything for some random person. It's very rare where we have to do that. And the one time that we did, we got Matt for PlayStation Drive, so that worked out pretty well too. So yeah, they're phenomenal. But certainly there's more that we want to accomplish, and I have to find more space. And this is the maze wall that I ran into was discovering that it actually wasn't the Kato leaving. It was just discovering I actually don't have more time. And I think that my enthusiasm and energy over the years have kind of they reached an end to that path that was on, if that makes any sense. In that
Absolutely.
I couldn't just because I had an idea and I knew how it would work, then it would just happen. And that had been the case for a long time because I was problem solving along the way. And if we had an idea, I could see it from beginning, middle, and end, and we executed. And I reached a point where I didn't have any time to do anymore. And that was new for me. I'd always found a way. I'd always, to the wired internet, I found a way to get that thing in there. But I stopped finding a way for some of the new ideas that were coming about. And that's when I went, okay, I've got to look at this in a different way. And luckily, Ryan has always been there as a sounding board and comes with a very pragmatic perspective. Okay, this is how it is. He's the weatherman. He looks outside and he goes, it's raining. But that's been really good. That's been an interesting journey this year.
To what extent, Sean, are you still problem solving?
Always. I think there's always something, and I think it's to different degrees. I think problem solving can speak to something that's a pretty massive, major concept, or there's little tweaks. When I say always, as an example, I'm problem solving how we can, and maybe this is more solution creating, which is a more positive way of just get the word problem out of there. Let's make it softer.
It's good. No, it's good. I also don't call it problems. I call it challenge, right? So. Yeah. Because it has a bit more, it has a different energy than calling it a problem.
Yeah.
But I think I like the word problem solving because we actually are involved in the behavior, and this is my encouragement to you, right? And this comes out of my coaching training, and also as part of the coaching sessions that I have with with the clientele that I serve. The fact that you do a lot of problem solving, it also means, there is still ownership, right, to the whole Carpool community and to what Carpool stands for. And I'm kind of wondering if we look at next year, whether a shift, and this is an experiment that I would like you just to try and to see if this works for you. We have a saying in coaching is, let's spend a little bit more time admiring the challenge or admiring the problem. And so what it does is it gives room for you not to provide immediately the Band-Aid, the way to fix it, the way that we to come around, to how can we get this issue solved ASAP. But what you're doing actually is by giving it more room, you're coming way more into the position of the observer, and by observing not only the issue but also all the other stakeholders. And I think this is key, all the other stakeholders that are involved. And you've got to ask yourself the question is, what is this moment trying to teach me? Because you always feel the need to solve specific issues or specific challenges. What you might be unaware of is, by doing that, there's also a form of disempowerment that happens with regards to the other stakeholders, right? And so rather, by you taking a step back to say, okay, well, I might have an idea, but guess what? I'm not gonna play that card yet, right? I'm gonna hold that card close to my chest and rather see what's happening here within the system, within what all the other stakeholders are doing, and then rather practice empowerment, little nudging, so that people take a greater risk in coming up with potential solutions, even though this might not be your ideal or perfect solution to come to it. But what you're doing is you're developing the system per se to make decisions slowly but surely without you. Okay, and you can rather accompany them through the repercussions of some of the decisions that were taken, but you're creating an environment for others to learn without you coming in immediately with, okay, guys, I have the antidote. Here we go. Drink this, and you'll be okay, and we'll solve the situation. It's all about developing the system to a point that the system per se matures, and you are not part of the system per se, but you're actually being very clearly being, on top of the system or on the system, observing what is happening. I think that you might learn way more through that kind of behavior.
There's no doubt.
Than by playing your solution card, if it makes sense.
Talk to me about the journey that one goes on from going from playing more of that active role towards this ideal state. Because I don't know necessarily that it's a snap of a finger and then you're on the other side. Like, I don't know if it's that, but
very good.
I do think that there's a set of decisions, a set of activities, circumstances, and things that you find yourself in that you get along the way. Like, I understand, like, everything you said completely makes sense. What I'm conscious of always is the timing of when to deploy a strategy and or when you are at the end goal, if that's even a thing. Because there's a lot that you said that resonates, and I think we're on our way. But there's a lot also that I actually stopped myself about 4 times from jumping in to go like, no,
good.
I'm still not there on this, and this that you said. But there's certain things. It's like, okay, we're coming, but there's more. There's definitely more. And even I think I even defined problem solving slightly differently as more encapsulating that part of problem solving is the identification of the problem. Right. Okay. So I think one of the things that you guys see, this is getting into some real nerdy strategy stuff, which I am loving. But that's the strategy behind Carpool Gaming Day. That's why it's a day. And the team will actually, this is great. And you guys will see kind of like what's bubbling up behind the scenes is people will come and like, we should do this. And it's like, put it in the box. Like, we will do that, but like, put it in the box. Like, we could do it today. You're right. But let's have a collection of these things, and that allows us some pause. It allows us to continue executing. It allows us to avoid all the things that you kind of just described. So I think that part is good, but there are still things that I'm quite hands-on with, that I have so many people who are so talented that I could be still on my journey towards being on the system rather than being the active problem solver and execution. That's I'm not killing people.
No, all good. I think first of all, you need to, get a clearer understanding of what is the role that you want to be.
Yeah.
And let's be honest. You asked me when we spoke about football, right? When we spoke about what you call, or Americans call soccer. I'm sure Canadians call it football as well.
Depends on the day, I guess.
So for me, the question is, have I followed this? And yes, I have followed the world championship, every world championship, even though this one is pretty controversial.
Right.
What's a bit scary for me is the question of, okay, I'm turning 55 next year. How many can I actually still enjoy?
Wow.
Right. So for me, it's a very different perspective, right? So I know that I won't have, endless of World Cups to enjoy anymore. And so for me, it's a question. Okay, maybe if I'm lucky, I might get another 5. But then it's going to get tight, right? With regards to how many I can still watch. And so it's that it is the same type of perspective. That's the word I was looking for. The same type of perspective I think that you need to approach Carpool with regards to what should my role in Carpool be for the time that I have left?
Yeah. Wow.
Okay. And it takes you out of that. I want to achieve. You must get this. Right. So it gives a finite perspective with regards to what that role is. And then I think there are some levels of awareness. They're basically 4, but I want to take you through 2. And it links with my leadership perspective again, which is we have the task, we have the instruction as leaders to create. And I think that is right. That is, if you want to go biblical, right? God created the world in 6 days. On the 7th day, He rested, right? So there is a creation instruction that we also have, right? For the time that you have left, if you want to create, how do you actually want to spend your time? And so there are two levels of awareness that we face in our daily living. The one is the perspective of life happens to me, which is I am at the effect of life. When the shit hits the fan, right? I'm in the way. Guess what? Right? I'm gonna be covered in goo and poo. Right?
Ooh.
And I could be very, very, very quickly. I could fall into the mindset of a victim.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So victimhood. There's drama. Right? Things aren't working the way they're supposed to work.
Yeah.
And these are the culprits. Right? And I need someone to help me overcome.
Yep.
And that takes a lot of energy out. And so for me, an important shift that needs to happen in the way of defining what your role is going to be for the time that you have left is life happens by me. So I'm shifting from to me to by me. And why by me? Because I have the instruction to create. So life happens by me is, how can I be true to the instruction of creating so that I can shift out of the mindset of victimhood, which is at the end result of life happens to me and there's a culprit out there, to take responsibility of how I'm feeling, of the pain that I'm experiencing, the frustration that I might be experiencing, to shift to say, okay, I'm no longer going to be, we call this the previous state, by the way, life happens to me below the line. I'm going to shift to above the line.
Mm-hmm.
And 90% of us all the time are always reactive, right? So we react to everything that is happening out there. But we hardly come to the point of being, I wouldn't say here proactive, but just active to create. And so we actually need to be conscious, maybe a few times of a day. Where am I? Am I above the line? Am I below the line? And if I'm below the line, asking the question, am I willing to shift? Am I willing to shift sometime today to be above the line so that I can create? I might need half an hour. I need an hour, but in that hour, I'm gonna block that hour for myself so that I can create, and I can create an aspect where I take responsibility of that which is happening to me, and move that to the next stage. So all it is when you're becoming or you're wanting to live into the state of life happens by me is creating options. Life happens to me and you're a victim. It means that you don't see options for yourself, right? And that's why you need a helper, right? But that is a dependency that you don't want to have long time, right? Because
yeah? And you're saying the word help too, and I'm even thinking like the in an extreme case, it's somebody to do it for you, to somebody to like build you the staircase.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. And so for me, when you make that shift and you say, okay, I'm gonna be a creator, and I'm gonna get myself surrounded by co-creators. Mm-hmm. The helpers then become co-creators. Are you with me? So that's the shift that needs to happen, because the helper is, we're not talking at eye level. Mm-hmm. Are you with me? I'm the sufferer here. I'm the person that's in pain, blah, blah, blah. Help me get out of it. And that is also quite a vicious circle.
1,000%.
Versus, So if you shift to say, okay, well, I have the instruction, I have the order to create. I'm going to activate other co-creators around me, and the perpetrator eventually then becomes, if you make that shift, the challenger. Yeah. Right, and we are back to the challenger. Mm-hmm. Right, and so it's the role of. And again, how do you define this role? I think if you're really operating out of the perspective from, the time that I have left is limited. I'm not here on this planet forever. Mm-hmm. Then the instruction to empower the system so that the legacy of that which I'm trying to create survives me is carried on through the people or through the co-creators that I've empowered. I hope I'm making sense. So that's
definitely make it's like and
okay.
I'm like super present and also just grateful for this conversation in the moment. I'm like I'm thinking like, man, how lucky am I that this is a chat that we can have, because I think that sometimes I think you and I sometimes get to do this, Michael, where I think we're talking about one thing, but I also want to like illuminate, people who might be listening to the fact that don't close your mind because we're using the topic of content creation, that we're only talking about content creation. Like
Exactly.
this to me is applicable to so many walks of life. And that's where I was like, I'm present, but I'm like, man, this touches on my parenting and my fitness journey and my content creation and my literal job and so many other things. This notion of, I'm reflecting on lots of conversations I've had with one of our mutual friends, the lovely Marcus O'Neill, who's been there for me on a number of different fronts where I'm like, I feel like, parenting has caused me to not take care of myself, or my job is stressing me out. So I'm not motivated. I don't have the energy, and I excuse. And then all of a sudden he's like, just call me, like whatever, I'll answer whatever questions for you. And he did more than that on a couple different fronts. So I'm reflecting in this moment of like, and I'm sure you do the same thing. Like, who are the people who have helped us along the way? And though it's such a special relationship, especially if you're able to reflect and identify like, wow, that person could have done anything else. They had, if I've got things going on in my life, they've got just as many, if not twice as many, like that they could be doing anything else. And how lucky are we that this is me reflecting on my conversation with you right now. How lucky am I that you could be doing anything in the world? You could be literally watching the World Cup.
I would change it for time with you, to be honest, because that which is there is past, having no influence or no effect on those players' lives, but I can have a little effect on your life.
Huge.
To maybe help you make a healthier decision here and there, and those healthier decisions have bigger ramifications to the system in whole, right? So, and I think that's actually the gasoline that kind of keeps me going. And I just wanted to say, Sean, none of us, first of all, none of us can make it out of here alive, right? So I think that's given, right?
Yeah.
But point number 2, none of us actually can make it alone.
Yeah.
So the fact that we need co-creators for our own happiness and for our own success, I think that is a fact that is given, but it needs to be a relationship that's at eye level. So,
and that actually connects to one of the questions I have for you, Michael, on this topic of, creating a system that you can be on top of. You're kind of disconnecting, you're surrendering. As someone who builds the system but holds relationships so important, and sometimes that can be taken to the extreme of, do I always have to be liked? That might be a component of it, but certainly it's more about just the impact, both in a interpersonal relationship piece, how enjoyable life is, the happiness is there, the support systems that are there. What happens when that has been the basis of the journey, and then you move towards surrendering? Like, I wonder about disengagement as part of that, where you almost like detach and you kind of like start floating away off into space, which there's a very real and forever permanent reality that you're kind of talking about as far as our time here. But there's a time in between that permanence, whether it's a quitting of a job or our passing, or we're still around, we're still here. And so I think about like not like a patriarchal or a matriarch, like going into the final stages of life or a journey within a career, like where they're still there, but they're watching, say, like a family. Like I think about like my dad, like we're not as engaged as we were when he was building the family. He gets to kind of like watch us do our thing, but I worry about that, and this may be keeping me in the space that I'm in longer than maybe it should, or whatever. It's definitely impactful. Where I'm like, that is very scary because it seems lonely, and it seems like you'll be forgotten, or a lot of those things. I could go on about like that, but hopefully that makes sense. Of okay,
totally with you.
I'll float away, and you guys go have fun. I'll just be here alone in my old folks' home.
I think the fact that I'm totally with you what you were saying when I was doing my training, becoming a coach, a systemic business coach. The thing that was really keeping me busy was the fact of I don't want to be forgotten.
Right.
So, but I think that exactly the thing that you are creating right now is your legacy, so that you will never be forgotten.
Yeah, and I guess
Yeah,
the connection is: will you be forgotten, or what is the activity that either demonstrates that, or like, where do I get that feeling? Where do I get that reassurance? Maybe I haven't been forgotten, but man, I don't get to have the same laughs that I used to. I don't get to have the same connections on a moment to moment level like that. That is different, and so that's kind of that's where my mind goes, I think.
So I think also that we tend to compare the experience we felt way past. So, for example, I told you about my South African connection. I have a best friend. We see each other once every 5 years.
Yeah.
And we reconnect, right? Because something that is very basic connected us when we met at the Air Force. And even though we don't speak regularly, we have an incredibly deep connection. But it is, you can't compare it to maybe what it was before. Why? Because both of us have fought many battles, and both of us are different to how we used to be when we actually engaged and had a good time.
Yeah.
So we are more scarred, right? So, right, maybe there's a portion in us that looks a little bit more like Kratos, right? A bit more grumpy and right, and a bit more black and white in their thinking. But I think it's the question of acceptance, that in the core we still love each other deeply, even though we can't always follow or understand, what life has done with us, and maybe how certain values have shifted. So two prime examples is let's see how vulnerable we can get here. So Alan, he's my best friend in South Africa. We've always been incredibly accepting of each other, regardless how little contact we've had. So it's almost like we're hitting it off immediately when we meet again. But I do notice pain, disappointment, hurt that he's experienced because of, people that he's trusted have betrayed him, and he's been backstabbed, and he's not always been successful in all the ventures that he's had. So I've seen someone who's pretty scarred, right? But I still love him. I still accept him, and he's likewise with me, right? So he would definitely take the bullet for me. With parents, it's a little bit different because I think your parents are always your biggest critics out there, right? Regardless of what you do. And so I saw my parents last in 2017. We wanted to go down in 2006. So they're living in South Africa, just for context, right? So we wanted to visit them in 2020, and 2020 Corona hit, and obviously many variations every year after. And so we visited them for 2 weeks in October this year. I did not recognize my mum, Sean, when I know it's my mum. Yeah. But the person who greeted me really felt like an alien or a foreigner, because the years had their toll, the 5 years. And it's the same with I have a stepfather. It's the same with my stepfather. It's almost like after the first 2 minutes, I sat in a room with strangers. And these are my parents. Because life had taken their toll on them. They're taking their toll on their physical and mental health. They were barely coping with regards to the challenges that life was throwing at them. And I know that I had to intervene, maybe no longer out of the role of a child, but perhaps also here as a role of a /parent caretaker, to make decisions for them that they could not take for themselves, be it out of pride, be it out of, I don't know, Stockholm syndrome. And so that dynamic has changed. And to kind of go back to your question, is there is fear, and I can fully understand the fear of in the act of surrendering, that the nature of relationship changes. But I think that the first way to combat that fear is truly through acceptance, right? Acceptance that, okay, so it does not take away from the moment, but it gives you a new reality, a new starting point with which you can choose which is the best way to engage with the new circumstances in a positive and healthy way, if that makes sense. It is, you can never, and I mean, that's what's so special, right? You can never recreate that which was. It'll always be under the guise of something new, under the guise of something that is more developed. And I think that's why, to one extent, we must appreciate the times and the good times that we have, because there is no guarantee that that will ever repeat again. But I think that you, just as much as loving your partner is a choice that you make, you also make a choice to stay engaged in accepting of those people that are really important to you, those people that are I don't know, that were integral in the forming of who you were as a person, Sean. But I don't think that to hunger for that type of dynamic that you might have had, the form changes, accept the form of the change that comes with it, and see whether there is an open way for both of you to connect. So it's very different, right? So I kind of, my parents might feel that I was very intrusive in the decisions that I took. So I organized some care. I organized a nurse to come and visit them every 2 weeks and those, because they don't want to go into the old age home and things like that. I'm their only child. So they might find that is very intrusive, but I know it's the right decision for them, even though I know that they can't see that. And the fact with me and Elle that, yes, we are scarred. We are like two Kratos meeting. And yes, we had a company once together and we've moved through, various stages of development. But in the core of who Alan is, I still love him as a brother that I never had.
Is there an ownership for you as far as being an only child with your parents in that sort of a situation? Like,
to a certain extent, yeah, absolutely, to a certain extent, because there's no one else who really cares for them. I have connected, I have connected all the neighbors, with WhatsApp and so whatever. So we have systems there to kind of check that everything is okay, because the telephone contact, I'm not sure whether they can or they forget, or my mom is very forgetful. So she has, I think, the first forms of dementia is already present. So it's a question of how do you accompany this in a good and healthy way, So if you're talking about, I'm not sure whether we're going to do a yearly review, but if we talk about, what were some of the highlights, it would be this, even though the highlight wasn't all that positive, but it's basically the cycle of life, and how much 5 years. How much difference 5 years can bring about, that there's a major character change to the people that you think you are closest to, but then eventually you don't recognize anymore.
Well, that's the thing that kind of makes me want to throw out every single 5-year plan that I've ever had or thought of. It's just like, why even do it? Life continues to spit in the face of planners like us.
But then again, that's why it's important. Life happens by me. Even there, I had the instruction to create.
Well, and and that was such a defeatist attitude. I think, well, if I can't control anything anyways, then why even try? That is such a. I don't think that I'm being hyperbolic to say I think that's a fairly common response to a particularly challenging thing where you're reminded like that. I wanted to ask you if you had been because you're a very reflective type of person. You tend to know kind of. Like none of us have a crystal ball, but you know and you're aware of like the circle of life and the cycle of life and these types of things. Had you prepared yourself at all mentally that one day that day was going to arrive for your parents and that this is the situation?
You think you have.
Right.
And I think internally you go. I mean, I went to South Africa. I went home kind of thinking, okay, well, things are not going to be easy and things, will have changed. But I think when the reality really hits you in the face and is like 10 times worse than the worst that you could imagine it would be. Then I must say, I have a wonderful wife and a wonderful daughter, and the support that they gave me there over those 2 weeks was really incredible. I mean, I it's probably the most that I've wept this year, kind of in my room, not in front of my parents, to kind of witness the specific change in them. It was the time that I finished, because I couldn't sleep at night, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Although it was an awesome game, it was probably one of the saddest moments in my life that I played this game, if it makes sense. So it has a very different meaning for me. Yeah.
Were there themes throughout, or was it just that the Xenoblade was a emotional journey as well?
You played it, right?
It's laughable how many hours I've not put into this thing. I think I'm still I'm 20 hours in, so I've still got lots of tutorials to go. But no, I don't.
Okay, so the topic.
But I know the premise for sure.
The topic of surrender, like we're giving up our souls in the battlefield.
Yeah,
and it's a little bit like that, right? Where I play the flute, and I know that next year, the year after next, a time is coming where I need to surrender that which my parent meant to me,
right?
Because they will no longer be with me, right? And that puts, again, another focus with regards to, okay, now that has happened, what has this experience done with me, with Michael, with regards to how I want to define my contribution for the time that I have left?
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I'm thinking, Carpool is your legacy. And hey, man, empower the system, that the system can go on and develop without you. I'm not saying that you should give up all control, because that's not what it is, right? But it's a shift to bit by bit give up a bit of control, so that something can come into life that is greater than you yourself, if you had control, could ever imagine. Right. So
yeah, I mean, oh man, there's so much here. I get little bits of positive reinforcement that that's exactly what's happening every little bit of the way, every day, every week that goes by. It's like, yeah, that is how it's going to be. And I think to the original kind of just topic itself, and you kind of touched on this, it's like finding the grace and the positivity, enjoyment, happiness, positivity, all the rest in that next phase, because all I see is not what it is now. Like it's such a black and white way of thinking about it, is that I know that I'm moving to something that doesn't include much of anything that is happening right now that is making me happy, that's filling my tank, that's driving me forward and keep checking off all the boxes. What we're saying is that there's another phase that doesn't have any of that. And it's like, okay, well then what? And
can I give you some impulses here? Because I really feel that what should not happen, right, is for the future to happen without honoring that which was. And especially with someone like Seth or someone who's new into the system, right? They need to, and that's why, and I'm going to ask you again here as a leader of a team, there needs to be a place, maybe once a year or once every 3 years, where that which was can be honored.
Yeah.
Right. And how do you do that? I mean, it's basically, whether it's virtually or physical. I mean, how important physical meetings are. I think Extra Life proved that. To take 1 or 2 days, you actually meet at a central place for everyone. You can experience each other physically, right? Because I think that's another totally another way to experience the facets that everyone can actually bring into the relationship, right? And once they stand or they are physically present in a room, right? And really let everyone that has been part of this journey, be it on a whiteboard or be it whatever, put down, the 3 to 5 highlights that this journey has brought them this far, and there can both be positive or negative highlights, right? So I would always say put the positive highlights above the line, put the negative highlights below the line, because those are our trophies, right?
Yeah.
That we've gotten through this journey. And I think, and once everybody's kind of given their feedback, as everybody's given their input with regards to, how were these last, how was this last year or these last 3 years, depending on how you do it. Let that experience, to the one extent, also define as, okay, well, if this is the past, if these are trophies that we collected, what does this actually mean for our future? Okay, where are we heading towards our future? And they should not pinpoint the exact goals, but they should put on the playing field. They should, as best as possible, describe in what playing fields they feel they're going to be active. And all that you're doing, Sean, is you're just keeping the process pure, but you're not influencing that which other people are saying. You're actually playing the role, specifically here, of leadership, to kind of say, okay, and what is happening here? What patterns am I seeing here? What are the deeper things that I'm listening to? Because this, which they're presenting out of, that which was, is actually those aspects that will define your future. But it'll only really make sense once you've got the full picture from the collective of those who are on you or with you on this journey, if that makes sense. Right? And everybody needs a voice. Yeah? So,
and everybody is eager to provide that, which is like, I mean, I think we've all been in situations where you go, like, sometimes you're just trying to wring it out of people, like, come give me something. And that's not Carpool at all. Everybody has ideas, and they're like, just give me a platform or a format, whatever the meeting, whatever it is, let me tell you what it is. And that's your job is to activate their resources. That's all. It's not to give them the perfect answer or to spoon feed them. It's to activate the resources that they might not know they have within them. It's all about resource activation. That is your role. When we started Carpool, and the idea, like moving on from Yumi Capri and then basically making it a much more diverse team as far as the number of people and thoughts and perspectives, I remember talking to my boss at the time, because she was very encouraging about this as a little side hustle, as she would say. And I've recently done a lot of reading and listening about creatives and managers in a professional setting who have a creative endeavor outside of work, and how positive that is for them. It's like, okay, great, that's what this is. But I remember at the time, particularly, struggling a lot with what the future of this was going to be, but then also like what my future in my professional role was going to be. And, I think it's just a perpetual struggle and challenge having kids and life and everything. I'm like, man, it's mounting up, and I am choosing to do this Carpool thing. I'm choosing to add more perspectives, which is good, but it's more complications and stuff. And I remember saying to her, I'm like, do I really want to be a manager for my hobby? And that's been a thought that's been on my mind basically ever since, and probably always will be. And I think that understanding what that really means in a best case scenario has kept me from really leaning into it. Like exactly what you said, like, can we meet in a space and reflect and honor what once was? Those are things I do in my professional setting for sure. But I'm like, why haven't I done that with this?
Interesting.
And is it part of me like putting up this invisible barrier, like don't go full in, don't go all in on leadership and coaching and that kind of stuff? But I don't know what the answer is here, but I'm definitely coming to that awareness in this moment of like, I think that's it. I think that I have created a barrier for myself to not go further. And whether it's saying I don't have the time for it, or saying that it's difficult to get everybody together, or whatever it is, I haven't wrestled through that mess to get to the other side, which is exactly as you described. Let's get ourselves, like, how do you do that? It's not impossible, which is, basically the basis of where I see a lot of things. Like, is this actually impossible? Are we talking about going to another star system? You know, like, because that's kind of on the edges of physical limits of the speed of light and travel and things like that. So
exactly,
that's my limit, Michael. Is like, is it if we're not talking about going to Proxima Centauri or whatever, then it's on the table. So you're telling me there's a chance.
Funny. But I mean, at the end of the day, the fact that you are experiencing, and I'm just going to put in there what I experienced from you just now, even though just virtually, is fear.
Oh,
this fear of what does it actually mean? Mm-hmm. What will it mean for me to go the next step? And to maybe also, I'm not sure, because I know that you, at least I think I know, it's not about control.
Right.
But it is
right.
But it is about surrender.
Like, thank you. Like, yeah, because, and this is what I was kind of alluding to earlier. Sometimes our actions and what we say give off an impression of a certain thing, and control is easily like what can be perceived, and it's definitely not like. And I think that's the trick of any leadership position, is actually you realize quickly how little opportunity, control, time, ability that you have to control it all. And you want smarter people. You want, like, I want a Seth doing what Seth is doing, because, like, nobody can beat him at it. Certainly not me. I want Ryan doing what he's doing, because nobody can top Ryan doing what that is. So that's all great. But yeah, it's fear is probably, like, I feel like this is like a 2023 theme. It's kind of been bubbling in 2022, but like what I do about it is going to be an interesting chapter in all of this. And it's all logged. It's all on the internet. That's why I love doing this show, is it sometimes we'll talk about, top 20 games and creating lists with Robby Bobby Miller, which I'm very excited about. But other times it's about grappling and wrestling with what is next, because it's coming. Whatever it is, it's on its way. It's inevitable. And we've had some harsh reminders over the last 2 or 3 years, and probably our entire lives, that our time is finite, that whatever happened is going to happen. Sometimes it's unexpected. And what are we going to do about it? So I feel on a number of fronts that I'm walking up to a cliff, not in the dark sense, but in a, like, there's only there's only a couple inches left before something is going to happen. We're going to either like leap off and have a squirrel suit or a parachute or something, or grab a ladder, or I don't know, like, but it is as scary. Like, what is it? But I keep getting nudged from behind, because that's how time works, getting nudged towards whatever that next phase is. And yeah, that can be anxiety. That's anxiety, really, is feeling like you're running out of space. But I feel like I'm coming up to that on a few fronts, I think.
And I mean, you do have a therapist, so this is what I would maybe invite your therapist, or at least the point that you discuss with your therapist, as this is not a therapy session.
I'm just going to send this to her, actually. Can you just like listen to this, like, while you're out for a jog or whatever, and then we'll catch you. Like, this will catch you up, okay? We haven't talked in a bit.
But in all seriousness, Sean, it really comes to the point of you at the moment are the bottleneck.
Yeah.
And the fear that you're experiencing is actually the bottleneck with regards to, I'm not saying preventing, because maybe that's an exaggeration, right? But the birthing process of that which wants to be born not being smooth. Mm-hmm. If that makes any sense.
Yeah,
right?
Big time.
And I think that we spoke about acceptance today. And I think point number one is really coming to the point of allowing, accepting the fear that you are experiencing. Mm-hmm. And there's a process for that. But also there is an intention. There is a good intention behind why that fear is actually there.
Yeah.
And what is the good intention? What is the positive intention, right? That the fear is there because it's just something that is trying to protect you.
Right.
Right. And the question is, well, what is the positivity, or what is the what is the goodwill that is behind that, right?
Yeah.
Is it just ego? Is it, because we all come to the point where we can't hold on to anything. And so funny, because we have this discussion about, all the things that we want to collect, all the hard copies and
I know.
and the hard covers and all this kind of thing. So I'm thinking, okay, guys, guess what?
They don't go with you.
They don't go with you on the one thing, and also the fact that you are collecting them. Eventually, you'll reach your fullness, and guess what? Unless you make space for something new, you'll stop growing. And I think that's exactly it now for you as well, Sean. Unless you make space for something new, you will stop growing.
That hits so hard, you have no idea. It's so funny because, like, on a very almost like at a silly front, I just want to constantly. I've made mention about it a couple times in the last couple podcasts. I want like a shipping box like in my driveway so that I can just throw stuff out, because literal space, like physical space, is a thing, and it's, far be it for me, because what's normally behind me is a bunch of these toys.
Well, mushrooms now.
Well, yeah. This is the best virtual back. I can't believe we haven't done this before. This is amazing. But that's constantly on my mind, and all the way through to professional, family. Again, like it's all the things. It's so top of mind, and I think I'm on holiday now until like the new year, so I'm off work. I actually don't have to do any work. And what I love about this is January 1st is, it's New Year's, and some people have various levels of relationship with the new year. I have a phenomenal one. I love the new year. I love the fresh start, the clean slate. I know it's just another Monday or Tuesday or whatever. I choose to put a lot of meaning and emphasis into the new year, because it's not going to come, like, nobody else is going to do it for me. Like, I just feel like it's an opportunity for this to be a break. We get to, like, there happens to be Christmas that we celebrate, and there's lots of together time. And it's, as you get older, that's actually challenging, I think, of participating among so many people and all the things going on, responsibilities. But there does get a break. There is a breath for at least a moment, and then a fresh start. And so this conversation, I think, has to be an annual thing for us, because this is very timely.
Yes, I'd love to.
It'd be great to have, like, December with Drellesh, I think, could be a thing. Everybody loves
D&D.
a little alliteration. D&D. Oh, yes. I love it. Advanced D&D. Yes.
Advanced D&D. There you go.
Oh, that's so good. But I think I've been aware of this concept that you have to make space in order to grow. That's not necessarily new, but the way that you've said it, the context of the conversation that we've had, and some of the thoughts that I've been kind of wrestling through over the last little bit, it's like, man, that hit me completely different than it has in the past. I guess in a way of, I can see vaguely and better than ever what that could be. Instead of it just being a concept, I'm like, okay, I think I know what to do with that. And that I get very encouraged. I see it in my son, actually, as well, as he's learning. And that, like, you see that light bulb. I think I want to throw back to you in a moment here of, this is why you like to coach other people. Because I think that's a gratifying moment when you express a concept or a path or something, and then you see the light bulb go out in the other person. And you're like, there it is. How cool is that? How cool is that, man?
And that's really, the thing that I do, right? So, I'm humbled, and I'm thankful, and I'm grateful that I can do that which I do.
That's so cool.
It didn't, come overnight, and it's also something that I worked incredibly hard at, is to create trust. Right? And it takes a long time to create trust, and it takes a second to throw it away, if you know what I mean.
Wow. Yeah.
So I think for me to and we all fail, right? But I'm trying my utmost to be a person of integrity. I was thinking there is a German word called Begleiter, and Begleiter basically means is he that accompanies. And so the clients that I've had a lot of them have been with me for over 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not also typical coaching, because coaching, you only like get a certain amount of hours. But these clients kind of, tend to book me year from year. Whether that continues, I don't know, but I'm grateful that that is the case.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also feel, obliged to really be someone, who remains relevant to them. And so the funny aspect, I was thinking, well, I'm kind of an escort, right? Without kind of the sexual favors, right?
I should hope so.
Because it's difficult. No? So coach doesn't really describe it, although what I do is coaching. It's not therapy, because I don't go into the question of answering why. Ask what, not why.
I was thinking of Jose.
Perhaps right is perhaps in the role of a therapist much better. But for me, it's the question of, my starting point is, it really is acceptance. And okay, so this happened to you. Okay. And so those were your limitations. Now, what you going to do with it?
Yeah.
If you have the instruction to create, what are you going to do with the talents that you have? And trust me, you have talents. And so for me, it's a question of really defining, and maybe this is the reflection that you have over the new year is, what is the purpose that you want to live for the time that you have?
I think that question, it can be scary if you don't have an answer right away.
Exactly, but the
discovery of the acceptance, as your point, is great,
Mm-hmm.
and then how do I I understand that I feel like I'm also speaking on anybody else who might be presented with such a question, and okay, so then what? So if you come to understand that that's a good question to answer, and that there's a positive place on the other side of it, suddenly the wrestling to get to that point isn't thought of as wrestling. It's thought of as an activity. It's like jumping jacks. It's something that's joyful. And that's exciting, and that's the positivity.
So let me tell you, there's a polarity that I feel, at least that I'm experiencing as an outsider looking at Carpool. So on the one side, I feel the joy that you want for people to have who play games, for that to be felt and experienced and appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
That is the one polarity, right? Which could be, okay, in core, this is what Carpool is. And we are, although we have separate podcasts, we're just really speaking to the gaming mindset, right? However you want to enjoy games through whichever platforms you use, right? And on the other side, I hear is, gosh, I wish I could do this full time.
Yeah.
I wish I could make a living out of it.
Right.
Right. Building community.
It's the artist conundrum. It's everything. Like, I wish I could paint every single day. I wish I could play music every day. Wouldn't that be great to pay the bills, like playing music? Because look at the joy that it brings to people who listen. Look at the joy it brings to me. Like, all those things. That's a conundrum many of us, regardless if, again, it's video game content creation or anything. Yeah, big time.
And for me, the question is, okay, can both exist?
Yeah.
I know that this can exist.
Yeah.
And I know that this is not existing at the moment, or at least not maybe to the capacity or to the fullness that you would like.
Mm-hmm.
No, but then I also don't know, is this part of the legacy that you want to institute? Because I have not heard it from you, or I have not heard it from anyone. I just heard, okay, wish, right?
Yeah, right.
And also not directly, but you're right, I can also read between the lines.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of wondering, okay, well, if this truly is a purpose that you want to say, okay, I want to bring gifted people together that actually live these games, but they can also live off that, and they can live off that comfortably, and also that comfortably needs to be defined. That is the legacy that I want to leave behind. Then that already is, something to strive for, and it will make us kind of rethink, how we're going to put this out there, and I'm not saying that now we're corporate or now it's a business, but we need to think of it in aspects of, well, how can we actually make sure that there is a livelihood to be had for people who burn for this?
Yeah.
Right.
That's a hell of a goal.
Maybe that's, yeah. Okay. Yeah. But then that needs to be formulated, because only through, right. So, and again, I'm spiritual. I have Christian roots, but I'm not a churchgoer, right? So I'm not a practicing Christian, if that makes any sense, right? Mm-hmm. But I do believe that words give power, or that words empower, or that words create. And so for me, the ritual of saying something that doesn't exist yet is very much a part of the creative process.
Well, that's how we got here. Like, there we go. That's how we got to this. That's why you and I are talking.
There we go. Yeah. So if you want to take, God said, let there be light, boom, there was light. It's a little bit like that. Yeah. Right. So it's a question of, it's got to be pronounced. It's got to be verbalized, because otherwise it doesn't exist, or it's swimming around without any substance. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's whether you're going to make this public or not, or whether it's just going to be within the inner circle. There needs to be some sort of recognition or some sort of pronouncement, so that can also, and I think that's my wish, right? My wish is, and that's why most of my clients are creatives in one form or other. And there are, some of them, win awards every year. Some of them are not that successful, but that doesn't matter. But for me, the core of it is, hey, you got to name it. You got to name it, and you got to claim it, right? Yeah. And you got to claim something like that. If that is your goal, if that is part of your purpose, if that is part of your legacy for Carpool.
Michael, you do something extraordinary that I don't know is obvious to anybody listening, and I think that you do it purposefully and consciously. So I want to kind of pull at this thread a little bit in that
everything just
I know part of this is a little bit of me finally deflecting, because I feel I'm feeling a little selfish that like I'm personally getting a tremendous amount out of this conversation. So I appreciate you for that. But I also want to extract a little bit about you and your process and where you come from a little bit out of this as well, in terms of, you have come to me with questions and advice, but not necessarily put in advice, the traditional, or how people generally like provide advice.
Consultant. Yeah. I'm not here in the...
You're not saying like, do this and then do this and then do this. Or if I were you, I would do this. Like those. Yeah. So my question is, how do you create such a personalized experience? You created a very personal experience for me today. But not everybody. It's not like if you were to hang up with me and then jump on a call with another client of yours, they're going to be in a completely different space. So what is your process to kind of calibrate?
Wow. Now we're getting into it.
Yeah, man.
Interesting. And I think this is one of the things that I admire about you, the fact that you connect with everyone, right? And I think
that's why I want to know how you are doing it. That's a very, because this is like magicians kind of like meeting each other, like, what do you got back there?
Okay, so it definitely has to do with me reading you. Mm-hmm. So even though we're only doing this virtually, and there is a tremendous, and I mean, this is not hocus pocus, right? There's a tremendous transfer of energy, right? Something that you're calling from within me, which I'm making available to you. A lot of intuition, I think, plays a very big part. And I think you got to trust going with when the intuition kicks off with regards to how well you know people, how you read their faces, what their body language is saying, what aren't they saying, but you're seeing their body say, right? And then the aspect is to be 1000% present to where you are at the moment.
Yeah.
So my attention is 1000% honed upon you, how you breathe, how you look, and and that which I'm receiving from you. And so I can't do 8 sessions like these a day. It's just for me not possible, right? So if I do 4 of these sessions a day, I'm pushing it.
No kidding.
Okay, so I could do 3 like 1-hour intensive sessions like that. And that's it. And then I seriously go away. And now, even once we're done here, right, I'm gonna really still reflect about the conversation that we had. I'm gonna go to sleep and I'm gonna think over it. I'm gonna wake up the next day and I'm gonna think over it. And if one of the goals that I have is to be more digital in 2023. I'm going to make like copious notes of what's actually happening to me and what are the thoughts, while I was thinking about your challenge, while I was thinking about you as a person. I'm going to jot down, and then I'm just going to let it be there. And then in my next engagement with you or my next meeting with you, I'm going to see, is any of this still relevant? That which jumps out, I'm going to share with you. The rest is maybe just decoration. And then we continue the process. Right.
Interesting.
And that's the way that I do it. And to be totally honest, I love people, and I love doing this, which I do. And I think you do exactly the same. That's why I said, if you're going to do specialist tasks, you got to free yourself up. And I think the figure that I never spoke about is, we spoke about above and below the line. And I'm going to define below the line with regards to being part of the system and working on the system. And above the line is, being a leader and being on the system rather than being in the system. Yeah, that makes sense, right?
I definitely have talked about that in terms of like ownership and accountability, above the line, below the line.
Perfect. But you have above the line, you have a task of empowering, making sure that the elements that are, I'm going to say the people, but you know what I mean, the elements that are involved in your system have a visionary eye with regards to, what is the next level of the thing that they're doing? What is the interpretation of that? So you're almost like the conductor that everybody can define for themselves what their next development stage is, right? What is the next, I don't know, we're talking about Pokemons, right? So what is the next development stage of that thing that they're doing, man. Right? What does it look like, right? And so you very much are above the line to kind of pull all the strings together and to put all the puzzle pieces together to kind of see what that puzzle piece looks like, right? And so it is a lot of empowering. It is obviously also your own self-development with regards to enlarging your mind, because that which you're trying to create can only be as large or as big as you think, right? So there you are the bottleneck. If you are thinking in small terms, then it will only but remain small. So
totally.
The bigger you think, right, the more you allow, the more space you allow. If you can enlarge your tent, enlarge it. If you can't enlarge your tent anymore, make sure it's empty, right? So that, right, more newness can happen in there.
Yeah.
But it is, and we're talking about time, it is for you to remain some sort of balance, 70% above the line, 30% below the line.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So if you want to do interviews and you get joy out of it, and it's also part of your centering exercise because it does as much for them as it does for you, right? So you also,
there's no doubt,
an important puzzle here, right? Make sure that it doesn't exceed 30% or keep it within the 30% boundary so that you have 70% to do kind of on the system work rather than in the system work. Okay, so if there's a balance to strive for, you won't get it right every day. But I think all in all, once you aggregate all the numbers, you should have about a 70-30 split. That should be a split that you should achieve. And if it's 60-40, it's 60-40, but it basically means a 10% shift still needs to happen somewhere.
For sure. And recognizing that there's a spectrum there, I think, is always important. What do you think about, like, we talk a lot about theory and activating theory and hypotheticals, frameworks. I wonder if there's a similar, like, if there's a spectrum of people who, like, when you describe this to me, I translate it. I understand what you're saying. You're saying numbers, but I'm translating that into kind of like more of a feeling and emotion, like, because there's really no way of objectively measuring that. But that's through I think that's just part of who I am and the way that I interpret the world and everything. But I don't know that everybody, like, I definitely know that not everybody is like me. So this gets back into like the way that you communicate and convey your message to a variety of people. Like, have you experienced that? Like that some people you can express it in a certain way and they're like, got it, I'm totally with you. Or is it just more of a lift? Or is it a different way of explaining things when you try to convey what you've said to me to, like, again, a variety of different people? I think that's fascinating because if you have a team with each individual person, they read you and understand you.
Absolutely. They have a different pattern. Yeah. They have a different pattern how to recognize it. I think, first of all, you got to be clear before answering that question with regards to how do you personally tick? Yeah. So where is your kind of home base where, what is your center to how you can explain things? And I think also the knowledge that every model that there is in human existing is a imperfect representation trying to explain a reality or a possible reality. So all models per se are also not perfect.
Totally.
I think we must realize that, right?
Yeah.
So although I use numbers here, I'm not really a numbers person. I'm also more of a shape, sense, feeling, color person, and not a, I don't know, Excel table 0.5, 1.75.
Yeah. Well said.
So I tend to connect with people who have, and that's why I said my favorite customer group or target group is people who consider themselves creators, irrespective of career.
That makes sense.
I think first of all, you gotta accept the creative artist in you, and you could be in finance, but you could be incredibly good at storytelling, right? So for some, where you need to send them a presentation with Excel tables. It is, don't forget, figures are always history, right? It's always the past. It doesn't really describe the future. So that is the other aspect. So you got to put those facts and figures into an understandable story that grabs people emotionally and empowers them, encourage them to take the next step. And so that's why leadership per se, it's not only leading by numbers with regards to, it can't only but be performance.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Yep.
Right. So we got to improve our next year's or whatever, we got to improve our last quarter sales figures by 5.5%, because we don't really know, are we addressing a trend, or is it just because we haven't really put enough focus that we're not getting the results that we want? So I'm thinking that we actually too much running the world by numbers has caused the world to be in the way that we are, because too many corporates have followed what we were taught at university is to maximize profits. And to maximize profits means that we've taken certain elements out of consideration. For example, the whole environmental issue with regards to, or the sustainability issue. And we've been doing it for shareholders because obviously that's the money that we use. It's
measurable.
Right?
It's easy and it connects with people. People like money.
Exactly.
That's
it. But unfortunately, you can't keep a world healthy and sustainable if that is the only modus that you operate on. So we need to rethink. And I'm not saying that capitalism will disappear overnight, because it won't. Right. I think the pandemic has shown us that the rich have gotten richer. So obviously, obviously they're doing something right. But we need to add something. We need to add something, and we need to add a much more of a socio-ecological perspective onto the system that we have, that we operate. So, why am I saying that? Is in my conversation with clients, I do want to take the conversation beyond maximizing profit or maximizing efficiency, right? I want to take them into that bigger picture. And so we are talking, like now with you, I've used the word legacy because of the context that we've had. But the question that I ask them is, what is that which you want to leave behind?
Yeah.
Because, most of my clients are in their mid-40s to mid-50s, and they're obviously thinking about what does the next chapter in their lives look like. And it surely isn't chasing profit.
Right. You realize how silly that is. What I love what you described there is observing that everyone is doing a thing that's very simple to define and it's replicated across the board. And so what makes you interesting to talk to, and I imagine and hope, successful in your professional work, is you do it slightly differently. You don't have to do the same thing as everybody else. And that, again, is for you in your profession. It's content creation. It's everything. Like, I really hope that's like that is landing for people. Of like, I'm really talking about everything. That if you can identify, everybody's doing this and they are all in on it. They're 100%. Number one, it makes it very easy. You get lots of data. You can really see what's happening, the pros, the cons, lots of results for you to evaluate, to step back and go like, but if I just go like this way, it doesn't have to be in the complete opposite direction. Exactly. But if I just go like 2 or 3 degrees off, then you create a new space for yourself. It can be very successful. It can be you can avoid a lot of the issues that you fall into when you just double down on what everyone else is doing. And so this approach being slightly different, because I don't think that you're in the complete opposite direction of others who help someone else.
Absolutely.
But it's just a little bit different, and that creates new space for you. And I think that is truly inspiring to me as well. And again, across the board.
And I personally think this is my core aspect of my docking point is I love gaming. I mean, I grew up with it. I'm not maybe as experienced in gaming as as many of the listeners are, or also people actively involved in the Carpool community. But you guys create. And so, part of my legacy and my immortality is is hooking myself up to your legacy, if that makes any sense.
Totally.
If that makes any sense, right? So the fact that, how can I ensure that I won't be forgotten? I mean, if that is an intrinsic fear that that I'm dealing with it way better today. And today, that isn't actually one of the driving questions anymore. But about 7 years ago, it was.
Interesting.
But this is it, because I know this thing that I'm doing with you and also with the community, will survive me. The seeds that we're planting, or at least that I'm planting also here with you, and I'm not talking about manipulation, because all I'm doing is I'm trying to enlarge this a little bit, right? That's all, right?
Well, and I asked you to be on, so I think there's that's the best. That's when the best stuff happens, is when two people or two groups or whatever go like, hey, we should just talk. Like, we should do something. And I think that would be, man.
And although you are in content creation, I really believe, Sean, that the world needs more creativity, more than ever.
I agree.
We cannot solve the problems of this world through more legislation. Yeah. We cannot, right? Because with legislation comes corruption, right? It goes kind of hand in hand. And we need more creativity, a different way of approaching things. And I think that there are people here, listening and also involved that, that share some of that. And I think that, as we creatives, open up ourselves and are totally vulnerable, totally open, all in all, we probably have, out of all scientific careers out there, probably the worst self-worth out of everyone out there, because we judge our own creativity so harshly, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Oh, big time.
Right. Right.
Yep.
So imposter syndrome. Big time.
Yeah.
Right. You're only as good as, I don't know, the latest creative work that you put out there and how it was accepted in the community. And we shouldn't. Creativity is a process, right? And I think that there is a greater force out there that actually wants to use us to bring about a better world, so that we can create something that is more relevant to sustain and you doing the same thing, right? people that are involved with video games, they want to be entertained, but they also want to be inspired. They want to discover the next step for themselves in whatever career they're at. And I think we're playing here an important part. So if I look, with a helicopter perspective on, what Carpool is trying to do, there is a bigger purpose behind it, right? So we have a centering purposes for the creatives out there. I mean, maybe that's too big. Maybe that's not the vision that you share, but that's something that I see, right? So
it resonates deeply, and it's not. It's funny because sometimes when you get up to those ideas of like maybe this is too big, it's like maybe that's exactly why you should be thinking about it. And I don't know. I don't know that necessarily I have anything to like specifically attach that notion to, as far as like a higher calling or whatever that is. I wrestle with that myself in an ongoing way. Probably one of the things I'm maybe a little bit more private. I don't really talk about it too much in the public space. I
wouldn't say a higher calling, but there is a calling.
But there's something, and that's kind of what that's kind of what I'm dancing around to. I'm like, because how else do I explain it? Because I can't. Because it's so I wake up and I'm doing this, and I'm doing a version of this every single day, and so like how do you explain that? Like I don't know.
We can use football. And football is, you are on the playing field. And I think when you started with Carpool, you kind of had a position that you played, right? So you were very clear, I'm here to score goals, or, I'm here to cover the midfield. And now you've developed, now you've aged, and now you say, okay, well, maybe now I'm a trainer, right? Or maybe now I'm a club owner, right? And so now every time we're still playing the same game, and the goal is still to score 3 points at the end of the game, right? As you mature, your perspective changes, but you want to make sure that the club is successful. Yeah. So the pride that you have when you first put on the jersey and you scored your first goal, to you're training the team, that wear the jerseys you're proud of, to the point where, well, now you're a club manager. And you got to make sure that the system is working, but you got to look at the team at a different perspective with regards to, okay, well, how can this team keep on performing for the next 10 or 20 years? And I think that's exactly the point that you're at. It means that your relationship changes. And I think, if you want to summarize a little bit of what we said today, is the fear that you have is, I think, the recognition that the relationship that you have with Carpool is changing, so that it can go into the next level. At least this is what I'm sensing, right? Is you're noticing that the nature of relationship is changing. And that is something fearful to go through, and something where you need courage to kind of go through. But I think if you trust that, there is a bigger and higher purpose behind it, without us being religious, or because you don't have to be. Yeah,
you don't have to be.
It's a point. You don't have to be. It's a point of, okay, but this, I want this to survive me. Yeah. So when I'm old and frail, I'd love to see, what Carpool looks like then.
We can be old and frail. God willing.
Exactly.
We both kind of touched on, we don't have to be religious in order to see that this is the way that things go. Many people who are listening now weren't around during the days of Bobby Paul's. I get one of these like every 6 months or so.
Okay.
Bobby is that. Carpool is a result of. It's very much like a phoenix rising.
Gotcha.
Bobby was very much like a older brother, uncle, father figure as far as content creation goes, and he was much more than that. Just an awesome person in my life. But when he passed, we were forced to move on, and we had I really did think of it in this way of literal 1, 2, 3 options. Shut everything down, do exactly as we were doing before, or create something new. And the first two are narrowly defined. They're black and white. You can see that all the way through. The third option, which is scariest, it's most difficult, it's completely undefined, was something new. So what was that going to be? And we are, I don't even like using the words, but we're bigger than ever. We are 3 times, 5 times larger as far as our impact and our reach and what we're accomplishing now than with Bobby. And so I don't need to think about like hypothetically what would happen if I were to step out of the way, because there's certain, like as much as Bobby brought to the table, there's certain things that once removed, we were able to do. And it's like, obviously I would trade it in a moment, like to have him back, like go right back to how it was. That would be, but I honor his memory and his impact in what we're doing now. And that actually inspires me to take a lot of what you're saying to heart more than you could ever imagine. Because I can see,
I love you, Sean.
I love you too, man. Like cause it's all there. I don't need to think like, maybe he's right. Like maybe this is like, I've watched it happen. And so Bobby passed this on. I really do see it as that way. Like he passed this on to me to figure out what's next. And he guided me, and we learned so many lessons along the way together that led to us doing what we're doing now with the experiences I had with him and the cycle of life. Hopefully I can live a long, happy life. You know, I hope that it doesn't have to be quite an extreme exit. And there's a couple people who have passed on that I've been very close with that I've expressed this in the past too. I wish I learned that lesson without you dying. Like that would be awesome. I wish to God I still had my friend who didn't take his life, but I learned lessons from him doing that. And I'm like, well, that'd be great if you could just still be around and I have as potent a lesson. That would be amazing. A friend of mine who fought cancer for over 10 years, and his attitude towards every single day being a gift in face of this terminal illness was like, I would like to have that lesson and embody that without you having to, you know, dedicate your final days for that to land with me. And now it's like, okay, now everybody needs to hear that and know that and experience and internalize that without losing someone like that. And the same thing with Bobby, and you know, a lot of us can think about that with parents and everybody else who's passed.
Exactly.
Oh man, like the lessons are everywhere. I am so stubborn that sometimes it takes something extreme like that for it to like, oh, I get it. And that's led me to, in my stage of life now, just trying to be open-minded, because those lessons were there before. And it's like, hey, idiot, like what is it going to take for me to internalize that? So that's a lot of what I think people see from me now.
I wanted to reframe something that you said just now, and that is step out of the way. You're actually not stepping out of the way. You're just stepping on.
Yeah.
But I think that your input is still going to be as relevant as ever. So it's not like step out of the way and get lost, because that's not what it is. Right.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of what I was alluding to about an hour and a half ago. Like, what is that next phase? When you kind of detach, I kind of talked about like floating away, because that is, I'm glad you reframed it, because that's the conceptualization that I need to do. I need to
No, you're not floating away. You're not you're floating maybe because you're going on to another level. But I think that your input is going to be different, but just as important, because you're just operating at a level that perhaps wasn't there before, right? And you then need to, and I promise you, Sean, even though you don't know the answers now, if you open yourself up and do that step, those answers will come to you.
Yeah, I have no doubt. And it's such a wonderful place to find yourself. Like if you really, you hear that and you know that to be true, as in you've experienced it before, it changes everything. And it's so very cliche. Like the more you know, the less you know, kind of a thing. Like there's so many lessons that have been learned, and I'm like, okay, now I'm here. Damn it, I don't know anything about any of that. Like I've learned so much. I've been, really open to new ideas and practice. And it's like, golly, what is all this? What the heck is that? Who put this there? Nobody asked for that. Dang it.
It's going to be an adventure. It's going to be an adventure.
It's going to be an adventure.
I thought perhaps we do a little bit of a, and I don't want to take over the show, but so there are three things that are in my heart at the moment. The one thing, maybe just a short reflection of what was great about this year.
Yeah.
Because hey, let's honor that which was, right. We'll the good and the bad, right. So it doesn't have to be. I mean, I'm emotional right now because I know how meaningful this year was, and the role that Carpool, as a silent because you guys don't know the demons that I had to fight and the suffering that I had. Maybe Backtrackers a little bit.
Yeah.
And you through the contact that we've had. But Carpool has been a stable force, right, in my life, at least this year. And that's one of the things I'm thankful for. Point number 2. What do you still need to figure out? Maybe for next year. So what are the things that maybe, the things that you battled that weren't that successful, and where do you feel you still need to make a shift?
Mm-hmm.
And what is the one, I don't want us to go into like the 3 games that you want to play next year or whatever, but what is the one thing that you want to achieve next year? If there's only one thing that you could achieve with respective to either personal development, personal growth, you growing, what would that be? So maybe just those 3 things, and maybe that's a nice way, if you want to close off the show. I mean, I could still be with you here forever, but
I know.
But there will be other times.
This is nighttime for you. No, this is going to have to be a regular thing. I feel like I have answers for all 3.
Good.
But
good.
Let's reframe. So let's start with the first one. What are we proud of that happened this year?
Exactly.
I mean, I really appreciate this because it is important. It's very easy to let the passage of time slip by and you don't even realize what happened. This was the year that Carpool came into its own. I feel like the Nintendo Drive and the change with Kato is something that will change many of us forever. It has allowed Kato to focus on the things that are incredibly important to her, and she's been very successful with her personal, professional life, her role as a mother and a partner, and her YouTube channel and everything. Like, it's so proud. Like, it's just like you just see the tough decision that she had to make, and what I hope is very positive for her. We've welcomed on Seth and Lachlan, who have forever changed the future of that show and my relationship with that show. It has expanded my creative mind because I have 2 different people who bring totally different energy and perspectives to it. It has allowed, at least for Carpool, to do things that Ryan and I have been talking about for literally years. It can be something as simple as some of the YouTube shorts that people have been seeing, but the added ingredients in there have me so excited for the future, which we'll get to. But it's really we could have shut like, there's so many opportunities every moment to go like, it's done. We're done. Maybe the Nintendo Drive, like, that's it. Like, it ran its course. And so what you had mentioned before really struck a chord with me as far as being a constant for you and for perhaps other people out there as well, is because there is that thought that this is optional. Like, could we shut this down? So you've given additional purpose to the work and the stuff that we do, which is awesome. Like, that's as if we needed any more encouragement. That's incredible. I was putting together before I start streaming, there's a number of different ways streamers do this when they welcome people on, and they fire it up, and what screen do you see? And so is it a countdown? Is it music? Is it whatever? And so I've been thinking a lot. My constant message to my team is we create a staggering amount of content. And oftentimes, and I actually do this in my professional life as well, in realizing that there's a tremendous amount of content available. Is it a single use thing? Do you unwrap it out of the package and you eat it and then that's it? Or is there more of a life, like a shelf life to this stuff? And so what Seth has brought to the table has extended the shelf life of some of this content by repackaging it to like a short or something. And I think we've only just scratched the surface on that. So yeah, man, I think that we've unlocked something very, very great. Oh, so what I was saying, about this, the starting screen. So instead of just doing a typical 109876, here's the thing, I realized as I was going through some comments on our YouTube channel how much content we have and how we can reuse it. And so now I just had a series of shorts welcoming people on in. And that allowed me to see, holy crap, look at all this content. And I felt this overwhelming sense of pride of both. Actually, it wasn't even for me. It was like of the team. Like, look what you guys have done. And that is the amount of it, how it still makes me laugh, how there was one, Seth was talking about Mario's butt, and I was just like, man, this is months later, and I'm giggling about it. So that was very special. It's all there. It's all captured. But even though it's there, I had to go look at it to have that feeling, to have that moment, and now be able to kind of share it. So like the pragmatic part is, let's extend the shelf life of this stuff. The emotional moment, the celebration is, look at us. Like, look at us. Look at us go. That is so cool. So that's a long-winded answer, but yeah, I mean, it still feels like scratching the surface.
But I also think the extending the shelf life of the stuff that you've created is such an important part, because, you know, your listeners, you know, have not been there since inception, right? And so that stuff that you did can, if you do it cleverly, remain relevant for years to come, right? So it's almost like your personal management system. And yeah, I think the most important book that I read this year was Building a Second Brain. And I think extending shelf life is the stuff that is in there is actually your second brain. Yeah. If that makes if that actually makes sense.
Totally
right?
does.
So,
yeah, because it felt like I was accessing like memory. It really felt like Matthew McConaughey at the end of Inception, just like going through the bookshelf, just like, oh, what's over here? That's cool. Exactly. Look at this memory. That is, exactly. I love that notion. The most important, what was it called? Did you say the most important book that you read this year?
Oh, Building a Second Brain.
Building a Second Brain.
I think I posted something. I mean, I know that I spam you from time to time, but it's in there. So perhaps the most important book I've read, because it'll help me with my task for next year, which is I want to be more, I consider myself like a digital immigrant, because I'm, 68 model. So I went through,
still original paint, looking good, buddy.
Thank you. So, but there is a lot to be had by building up a healthy and digital system. And this book is aimed at knowledge workers and content creators. So this would be ideally for you. I'm also a content creator / knowledge worker.
Yeah, so, I love that. I love the idea in reflecting on the year too. You know, we do our game of the year kind of conversations and stuff, and but I don't know that. I've done more reading in the last couple of years than I've done previously. But for me, they're very similar. I think I did like prerequisite reading to that, because I read a book by a guy named David Goggins called Can't Hurt Me. And my parents, I asked for it for my birthday. My parents gave it to me, and it comes across as very much like a self-help kind of thing. But this is one, when I think about, this time next year, when I will have run at least two additional half marathons and continued on my fitness journey. That's the book, man. And it's more than just fitness. It's like attitude towards everything. When I wake up in the morning, what am I thinking? What am I doing? How am I extracting value out of things that suck, things that are a struggle, things that are hard? I'm like, my perspective is completely changed. And I highly recommend this book to people.
DM it to me.
Totally.
DM it to me.
It's hardcore. Like, it's like this retired Navy SEAL, and he had to run like 100-mile ultra runs through the desert and this stuff. So like, I don't imagine myself doing that, although why not? I'm open to it. But some people, they define the experience of others too narrowly so that it doesn't impact them, and I don't like that very much. I look at this guy and go like, yeah, will I be a Navy SEAL? Like, I don't even know if I'm allowed. I'm Canadian. Like, I don't even know if that's a possibility. But between that and a book I'm reading by a guy named Chris Hadfield, who's a Canadian astronaut, wanted to be a Canadian astronaut since before that was even a thing. They didn't even have Canadian astronauts. He's like, I'm going to be one. I love that stuff. So, yeah, my interests in this year as well, celebrating this year, have expanded. This is actually one of my New Year's resolutions, was to expand my consumption and interest beyond video games, because they had been such a focus just with all the content creation for so long. I'm like, I like movies. I like comics. I like reading. I like, there's so much to enjoy in this world. And by doing that, I've, again, gained another perspective in the world itself is like, how lucky are we to have so much to enjoy? Like the complaint, there's too many games. How lucky are we? That is incredible. And I'm coming off as my typical, like, Shawnee Sunshine, as I've been called. Mm-hmm. It battles depression, dude. Like it is Absolutely. For me, it has been a tool in my ever-growing toolkit of how do I keep that at bay? This is a problem. There's too many games, but how positive is that? There's too many movies that I could ever watch in a lifetime. What abundance. So there's a gratitude there for sure.
Yeah, and I think gratitude is the first antidote to kind of deal with depression.
Yep.
Right? Is to focus on the things that you're thankful for.
Gotta get back to that pants podcast, man. So I gotta do it. And everything you said feeds into that pants. So patrons, I'm thinking about that while we're having this conversation.
All good. And I was wondering. The pants podcast is there. But interesting as you were answering this question and saying, hey, and this is, all the other energy that I kind of get to support me so that I'm mentally okay, that I'm centered, and it's not purely gaming per se, the gaming diet. I would love that to be visible in Carpool in some other way, but I'm not exactly sure how.
Same.
But we need to address all the other aspects of a gamer's life.
Yeah.
And I think all in the service of supporting creativity, if that makes sense.
Well, right? And I think that's what this I think definitely plays a role of. And but I think that, and I grapple with this with the show in general, is like it's not defined really well. And I don't even know if I want to define it. I actually love this nebulous space that it exists in, but it's not like nobody's Googling, how can I find a podcast with two strangers from the internet talking about stuff? Like it's just not.
So this is the idea. And I think that we spend way too much energy on structure. What you need is you need a strong search engine to find things.
Yep.
Right? So because the structure is only perfect for a time being, but it can be the biggest of mess in how you put things together. The secret is, do you have a strong search engine so you can find it? Yeah. And I think that is the key.
Yeah.
Building the second brain, that if you read that book, it goes into that we spend too much time and energy making sure everything is, it's like our email boxes, right? And I know that thank goodness that Outlook or whatever email program you have, hopefully it has a good strong search function, because that structure that you put in there is really only relevant for a specific project or a specific time period where that is relevant. And as soon as that's done, that structure is no longer relevant at all.
Sticks out like a real sore thumb. Yeah. After that. Yeah. Oof. What were we thinking? That made sense to us? Yeah.
Anyway.
What was the second question?
Second question is maybe what didn't go so well? What didn't go so well this year? What were the lessons that you still need to learn or still need to figure out for the future, or for be it 2023 or be it in what direction you might need to shift to come to grasp or come closer to an answer?
I need to be able to set people up for success ahead of time more clearly and with better preparation and tools and communication of my expectations. And so I won't go into details about specifics about what that is referring to, but there's definitely certain things that I was like, ooh, that could have been better. But there's an ownership on my part where I'm like, I probably could have communicated better. I could have asked for this. If I know what is going to make me decide if this is a good or bad or success or not, I can be better about that. So very much a personal, like I'm not even talking about like what Carpool can do better or whatever. Like personally, like that's a huge amount of ownership for me. Yeah.
You're talking about your marriage, right?
Yeah. Well,
I'm teasing, but I mean,
I look at it like maybe that, like me and Ryan. Yeah, like Ryan. My spouse Ryan Turford.
There you go. Yeah. I'm with you.
But you're right. Yeah, any relationship. But the notion of like, gosh, how do they do this? And it's like, well, what did I tell them? What did I give them? And doing that with enough time for the message perhaps not to land the first time that I say it is really the full extension of that, I think, in terms of I can say it, but am I doing it like the day before I'm expecting that thing to happen? Or how am I cultivating a full understanding of my expectations? And we're coming along on that. I think people both at Carpool and in my professional life, sometimes it can be a bit of a joke, but I think I'm fairly predictable. I think mostly people understand the level of standard and these types of things that, oh, Sean's doing this again. Oh, Sean, of course he would say this. I think that's a thing. So that's where I get stuck though I feel like it's what I need to do, but how do I do that, but also move on to your point earlier. So I think I've got a couple things just to kind of clean up on of this. These are the pretty specific expectations. These are some pain points that I think we can clean up, but then also get out of those weeds because that's very granular in some of those things. So from a management perspective, that's it.
The thing that comes up for me is maybe there is also an opportunity to teach them to ask better questions. If that makes any sense, right? So they need to be clear by themselves. What are they not clear on?
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So it has to do a little bit with empowerment and yes, maybe leading via questions. So not only being able to reframe, and again, that reframing needs to, I think, adjust it to the maturity level of the addressee, right? What's your relationship like? You know, to what extent are you seeing things through the same glasses or not? You know, what are our assumptions? And I think this is what you're talking about, is that you're realizing that the assumptions are different.
Big time.
Yeah. So
time and capacity and understanding. There's like almost like a handicap that I apply to it because this is not everybody's full-time job and they can't apply everything to it. So yeah, there's a leveling of expectations, I think, on that front.
All I wanted to do is not to do too much soul searching or navel gazing that the fault lies with you. I think part is also the empowering of training people or coaching people to the extent that they need to be more direct with regards to the things that they need from you, if that makes sense.
I appreciate that, definitely, because it's funny because it's still a delegation. It's still a sharing of responsibility, but there's also like an ownership to that, which is ultimately like what I'm attaching to is I can't just expect somebody else to figure it out, but like how is life happening by me? I think okay. That's interesting.
I'm with you. But don't forget that modern leadership is also a lot of nudging. So I think we're gone are the days, because I don't think it's realistic, right? That we spread out the whole battlefield, right, or the whole battle plan, right, the whole map on the table, and make sure that everybody understands, how each piece fits together. Right. It is more about nudging these days and what directions we should go, and
that makes sense. I've had it expressed to me with like the giant crusher claw on a lobster and the finer tuned one, like the pincher claw. So like, are you bashing things around, or do you have a finer tool for it? The only other thing that I don't know where I land on this is I'm wrestling with like our relationship with reviews. And PR.
You mentioned on your previous podcast with regards to should you give it numbers or,
but even if we should do it at all. And should we launch them on? I think we should be talking about games, and I think we should be critical in it. But I'm wondering, like, how much do we stress our people out in terms of thou shalt do this review, and you should have it out by this time, and those kinds of things. In terms of how it supports the growth of the channel. And I'm struggling with it because I look at God of War and Spider-Man and a few others that were spectacularly successful for us. And Court did a wonderful job, and Matt. And every time we talk about those games, those are big games. But when I look at the overall, it's like, do they all contribute in that way? The answer is no. So I'm wrestling with that, and I think I don't have an answer, and I don't think I want an answer. I think I want to spend another year or so kind of exploring this, but being expressive that kind of allowing for it. That I see it. I see that there's stress involved. I see that there's results may vary kind of thing. But I need more data, I guess, is a scientific way of expressing that. Like, I don't know yet. We'll kind of see. To the notion of what is everybody else doing and can we be different? Should we be different? Is there something there? I think there is. Everybody's doing reviews. Embargoes dictate that you have to publish them at a certain time. So there's a rule set that I actually kind of like going, okay, what else can we do there? I understand the framework that everybody's working in. Mm-hmm. Where can we play in that? So I don't know. But that's for the future.
That's one for the whiteboard in a
yes.
in a group discussion, right? To kind of see, because here it's, I think, where co-creation needs to happen. And with regards to what we spoke about earlier, is how do you want to define carpool in the future? And I think this is a key. It's a key question with it's the DNA. Yeah, it's a DNA question, right? So is this definitely at the core something that we are going to stand for or not? And I don't think that there might not be a yes and no answer. Mm-hmm. It might be one of those gray answers. Yeah. For certain circumstances, it's going to be a yes, and for certain circumstances, it's going to be a no.
That's
probably
kind of where I'm seeing. Yeah.
So, but maybe that can be defined,
which is an answer.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yep. So there. I don't think it is necessarily black and white.
Yeah.
But as I said, I think first of all you need to define the DNA, and once the DNA is defined, then maybe you can shed light on when is it a yes and when is it a no. Easier.
Agreed.
Yeah.
What was the third question? Is this what we want to do?
Can I quickly answer the second question?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is
yeah,
okay? For sure. I'm trying to be mindful of your. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
All good. It's also not that it's not that long, but one that I just wanted to voice because it's something that I want to change. I'm at the point that I can no longer enlarge my tent, and so now it's a question. I need to empty my tent, and I need to say, I wouldn't say I need to say goodbye. I need to honor that which once defined me, but will no longer define me on my road ahead. And the same counts for my wife, because my in-laws passed about, I think, 13 years ago. And we still have all their stuff in our cellar because they were separated, and we had like kind of two households, right, to empty. And us having all my wife's history here and some history from South Africa, because I also made that trip, is kind of filling our space. If you look at the office that I have here at my bookshelf, although I have some wonderful books here, they're also the things that define me who I used to be, but they're not longer defining me on the road that I'm on at this stage. And I really only want to keep the things that will define who I'm becoming. And so saying goodbye to that which was is such a hard thing. So I want to do it a la Marie Kondo, right? Like almost like
what sparks joy.
Thank you. Exactly. Yeah. So thank you for having me brought here, and now it's time for me to let you go.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that I need to learn to do better. It has not been a successful thing up to now.
Did you anticipate bringing those into your home before that happened? So to give you a little where that question is coming from, I am anticipating that moment, I know that moment will come when my parents pass or they downsize their house. Their house is loaded. They have so much stuff. And I'm curious, like my attitude now is absolutely not. It's not coming in here. I'm not taking it. Which is, these are how we set ourselves up for the most hilarious. Like, you think so? My parents. Okay. Yeah. My parents are. Okay. My dad will be 74 in January.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I mean, it'd be, I think, silly not to think about that sort of thing. But also, I've watched his parents, pass on and all their stuff going into their house. And I'm of a generation that our houses aren't as big as our parents' house. So at least in North America. So I'm looking at all their stuff and I'm like, absolutely not. It's not coming here. But I'm curious. I'm curious for you, like before the stuff came into your home, did you accept that was going to happen? Did you anticipate that was going to be the reality, or was it a bit of a surprise?
The answer is pretty easy because both deaths were sudden.
Right.
I mean, we one was a 2-year process, which we knew, but we never really, at least my wife never really, the question is, where do I come in and what can I tell my wife? Because I mean, they're my in-laws. Yeah. With regards to where's the barrier, right? Mm-hmm. And I maybe did not support her in the way that I could. And so the answer for her was, I'm going to take everything with me.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. And you said, okay, you want to be respectful of the grieving process, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. I think the answer to that question actually starts now with conversations that you need to have with your family, because it's very clear for me, after having gone through what I went through with my parents in October, is I don't want my little one to make that choice when the time comes, or the weight of that choice be so dramatic.
Trying to honor the wishes that they don't know what they are. Yeah.
Exactly. So I need to do my homework that transition is going to be as painless as possible.
Yeah.
Which means, unfortunately, and that's why the previous statement was so important, letting go of the things that used to define me.
Yeah.
Right. And some I'll gift away, some I'll throw away, right? Maybe some I'll sell. But let them play that role in the people of other people's lives, in the lives of other people, like they did for me. And that's the process that is not done maybe in a year or 2 years, but I can start the process now. And maybe you can have that conversation like I had with my mum, to say, Mum, you know what, when Dad, passes on, I'm bringing you to Germany.
Yeah.
Guess what? You have a task to do. I want you to get rid of all the shit that's
yeah, right.
Slowly but surely, all right? So
that's so funny. I'm not gonna lie. I've had that not in quite a. I've had that nudge with my parents. Like you have a lot of stuff. Like I'm just gonna. We can just acknowledge it, and maybe you can come to your own conclusions. Maybe we'll be a little more forceful later. But yeah,
and I exaggerate when I say
this room.
Shit, right? So, yeah, exactly. I exaggerate. Obviously, it has some sort of emotional meaning. But at the end of the day, we spoke about it. We can't take it with us, right? To where we're onto. So,
but you've established a nice balance between the extremes of nihilism and hoarding things. Like it's you can, because I look around and I go, my room is a great example of this, where I go, yeah, there's a lot of stuff here, and part of me goes, does any of it matter? Maybe none of it matters, and why even have it? That's not the right attitude. And honoring it and having positive moments and experiences with it. I'm looking at some magazines in front of me. These are great, and they serve a purpose in the moment, but they don't need to be permanent either. And so that puts them in a place that is neither completely meaningless and everything.
Exactly right. I think that's the healthy way to go about it. So last question. What's the one thing that you want to achieve next year, shift into next year, grow next year as a goal for yourself, Sean?
The one thing you opened it up in a way I actually have to answer. So I was going to say, for Carpool, you'll find out in January.
Okay. But I want to hear about you, because I think everything that happens to you and the way that you grow will mirror into Carpool. I don't think that those are two separate roads. I think that's one. I agree. That's one word.
I agree.
Until you come to the point where you say Carpool isn't me anymore.
Totally. Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. That you show up as the same individual person at work as I'm not. I don't change. Yeah. I'm gonna go upstairs after this, and so and be a dad, and then okay. I feel like the answer that comes to mind is to like narrow. It's too grand. Like so feel free to give me like a think bigger, higher than that. But like fitness is definitely top of mind. I feel better than ever as far as my mental capacity to endure long runs. Like I feel like my body is going to be catching up to my mind, but it's actually it was the opposite when I was younger. That my mind wasn't capable of even considering the fact that I could run longer than 5 kilometers. Like if I had a stronger mind at 20, I should have been running marathons because I was in tremendous shape. I would run and I wouldn't even think about it, but I'd stop at 5K. So my governor that I had, like the limiter, was there. Yeah. So I guess I think I may be answering maybe at a higher level now. My lower level, ground level is I want to run 2 half marathons. That's what I want to do. Great. My higher level is I want to further discover how far past my limits I can push myself and do it in a healthy way. I think in the past I've done it in a burnout type of capacity, but I have looked down the path, especially of a year, 365 days, 12 months, however many, 52 weeks. I've got a lot of time to plot my path for what this can look like instead of, I hope I can lose 5 pounds before the summer. Something very finite and short term. I'm looking at this much more long term. And I think this is just the first year. It comes out of, one other thing I'll add is a success this year, half marathon running in memory of my friend Justin Ching. And I wasn't ready for it. I just decided I was going to do it. I had been running a little bit, but I had not been trained up for a half marathon. And I was terribly frightened about a week before because I couldn't run 15 kilometers, let alone 21. And then I had a shift of mindset where I'm like, well, this isn't the end. This isn't, I'm going to run the half marathon and then that's it. This is a plot along the way of this journey. So as soon as I open my mind to like, I just need to finish. Doesn't matter how long or short or whatever, just finish it and move on to, and then you keep running after that. It's changed my mindset completely. So that's how I'm looking at this year ahead.
Do you need a co-creator to push you through the limitations you might come up or that you will come up against? Let's scratch that might because we know. Okay. Do you know who it's going to be?
I think, not to put pressure on, but I feel like he's already kind of signed up for this. But Marcus O'Neill he's right there.
Okay.
He's here.
Okay.
He's local. Like he's 20 minutes away. Like I can, and our families have become quite close actually. So it's been very nice. And there's a number of people in that let's get fit kind of mentality.
So maybe go into some verbal contract with them so that there is some sort of accountability, that you guys support each other, especially when you are experiencing you've hit a boundary or you've hit a limitation, right? That you or a barrier that you need to break through.
Totally.
Because none of us, again, right? What we said at the beginning, none of us can make it alone. It's extremely hard, and so it's always good to have someone to support us, to challenge us, so that we can make that, and maybe that'll also do something for your friendship.
There's
right?
no doubt. There's such a deep appreciation that you gain for someone who helps you along like that. There's also someone at work who has pushed me to like consider getting up early in the morning might be a key to this. I'm really glad that you said that and encouraged me to find that partner in crime, as it were, the support system, because when you're running, you are alone. And I actually I do prefer that. I know some people like running as a group or whatever. Like I definitely prefer the moment of like I want to be by myself. And I have definitely adopted sometimes my most energetic kilometers are when I realize like I am doing this by myself and nobody's going to do this for me. And how awesome is that? And I feel great about it. But that can be a slippery slope as far as leaning too far into I'm in this by myself. I am by myself, that I need to expand my scope beyond I'm all alone. And that's how I'll actually get there. Because I don't want to be by myself. There will be a time where it's too hard. I've got another hurdle to jump over, but it's a dichotomy because nobody's running those kilometers but me. Nobody's getting up at that time but me. Literally nobody is saying, hey, you need to go to the gym. There is absolutely nobody saying that to me. And that's kind of what allowed me to get so out of shape to begin with. People are very kind and polite, but nobody pointed out, hey man, you look like you're 30 pounds heavier than you were a couple of years ago. Like nobody has said that, but so you have to face that reality by yourself. But that's me.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But you need Marcus as someone like that. And maybe, as I said, if he's, I cannot think that he's not willing to. The way that I know Marcus, I think he would be, 1000% committed. Exactly. And so again, so once you meet that goal, and how will you know that you've met that goal? Is it once you successfully ran those marathons, or?
I want to say it's bigger than that. I think I might need to think about more.
That's the question.
That.
How will you measure? How will you measure that you've achieved it? I think the marathon is easy, but I'm also thinking here, right? So So what are the signs that will tell you, okay, I've made it. I've made that.
And I don't know exactly what I look forward to our advanced D&D conversations next year. That I know will be a marker where I look to, but I think about a conversation with you and Marcus and Jose and my therapist and a few others. That's going to look different. I think my capacity at work and my deliverables at work is going to change. I think my deliverables as part of Carpool Gaming are going to change my role. So I think if it, I guess one of the big whys, why am I doing it, is because I do believe it makes me better at all of those things. So a marker will be not necessarily just the crossing the finish line of the marathons. It's how am I going to deal with next year's challenge of Christmas with family and my responsibilities as a dad? Did those things accomplish their goal, which is very real, to make me better at all of these things? It's a run, yes, but am I more energetic? Have I maintained my health? Have I maintained my mental health and capacity? All of those things, which are, I don't think that you can score them, 80 out of 100, but I think you can do a letter grade. Am I A? Am I a B plus? Am I C minus? Something like that.
I'm with you. And I think that once, because you're talking about regulating yourself, right? So once you're able to regulate yourself, the shift into creating is much easier, because then you are not at the effect of all those other things that will actually cause you to make unhealthy decisions.
1,000%. Yep.
If that makes sense.
I literally, I was pushing myself at work, stressing out and everything, not sleeping well, making bad decisions, and I pulled my back on the day of on a big day. And it's how much more obvious can we get? Just, you're not treating yourself very well. And how ineffective are you in that? I was needed, and I was really injured. I was injured for a long time. It was very debilitating. So, and it didn't even necessarily jump me into action immediately after that, but definitely was a moment of, okay, you can push yourself in an unhealthy way for only a finite amount of time. How do we do this for much, much longer? Because we're going to be working, we're going to be living for decades still. So we got to keep at this.
So the impulse that I want to send you in closing is I would define, or at least when we meet again, right? A Limbus test that I will put into place is overcoming your limitation will mean for me, to what extent has your relationship changed with Carpool?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that is it's taking that relationship to another level.
Yeah.
And that's where I would see, and there you've broken through your own limitations that are present at the moment.
Yeah.
So if we have this, I mean, again, right? So if we have this conversation again, in December,
we'll have before then. I think we'll have a different conversation before December. I think we'll have, because I want to get into, we can close by giving a little teaser of what is to come. I want to where you have been and where you come from. We totally glanced over that. We need to have that conversation as well. But this is, actually your second time on the show, although this is your solo show. It was wonderful to have the German Wonders coming on, or the German Living Wonders, I guess. Deroy and you were on the show in the summer. So yes, you're always welcome. And I appreciate your friendship and being open to a conversation like this and everything that you offer. We have maybe next time we have 8 hours together. I don't know, man. Like,
who knows? But we didn't need to go through all of that as well, because somehow, even though I'm a different part of the world, and I checked, when did our initial contact start? It started in August, believe it or not.
That's it.
Yeah, and it feels like, hey, we've known each other for
long. No, that can't be right.
Somehow, we're connected. Even though we're in a different part of the world, even though we have very little exposure to our lives, and we live in different models, so to say, we are so connected at the heart. And I just wanted to say thank you for everything that you bring into Carpool, and for the stability also that you gave me this year, which hasn't been an easy year, right, in my life. I am forever thankful, Sean. Thank you. You and the whole team. So this goes to Seth, this goes to Lockwood, this goes to Josh. This goes to the whole Backtrackers family, right? Nagachaka, Bowser, who's there, everyone. So thank you. So thank you for being, the rock that I needed to hang on to through this time. Yeah, thank you, Sean.
I love doing these little kind of like post-show kind of chats, because what I do, just to pull the curtain back, as if we haven't done that enough, is I obviously recorded this conversation prior to me doing this, so I record the intro, then I kind of scrub through and remind myself kind of like what we talked about, and I just ended up listening to far more of the episode than I typically do, and that's when I know that we have something special. And what I'm taken away by is Drellesh is just such a caring person, and his ability to connect with me on a number of pieces that are really important to me. Like, even in this moment, I'm really caught up by the fact that so rarely happens, and I'm so lucky that I got to experience this today. And it's not the only time. I get this actually quite often in my life, and I feel like that is a huge contributing factor to why I feel like I'm so lucky. That's why I feel like I have such an enriched experience on this freaking planet, man. What an awesome life. And it all comes out of this podcast, We the GamerCast. Thank you, everyone, for supporting the show. Thank you, Drellesh, for taking the time out of your day, and also for us to figure out our time zone differences. We're on opposite sides of the planet, but you'd never feel the distance in that conversation. Goodness gracious, thank you so much. What a way to end off the year. I'm going to be listening and re-listening to this. And by the way, as promised, Drellesh did reach out and say, he shared some of the things that he was reflecting on. And so just a man of his word on top of so many other things. And I took it away too. Normally I record these shows on Friday nights, so I think I'm going to do the same thing. I think instead of I squander the remaining parts of my Friday nights after these chats, and I think I've now got a really concrete, tangible, beneficial thing to do. I'm gonna jot some things down, some observations and some reflections, and I have a feeling already Drellesh is gonna be like, maybe sleep on it, maybe do that. I'm gonna try this, or I'm just gonna see. I may get to the point where I can carve out time in the next day to do that, but that's where. Anyways, I'm getting into the details. Thank you so much. You can follow me on Twitter at Sean Capri, Sean like Connery, Capri like the pants. Support us on patreon.com/Carpool Gaming. And the final time, we celebrate the end of every episode with a clip of my good friend Bobby Pauls, who we talked about in the episode. This clip, what the heck is this clip? I don't know. What are we even talking about here? I think it's with Holly. I'll see you in 2023. You guys are amazing.
By the way, when are we starting our beauty channel? Because I know people are asking. ARGO keeps asking about when.
Don't listen to ARGO. What is up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Breaking Bells. I am Bobby, the Nintendo Guru, joined by the amazing, the wonderful Holly.
Hello.
Holly, what up? What up, Holly?
Hey, what up?
I totally forgot. Oh, no, I know what my topic was. I forgot what my topic was from Nintendo.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
Rein it back in.
Yeah.
Listen. So, I know me. I bought the NES logo. The NES.
Oh my God, I was so
the NES Lego. I bought the NES Lego.
Yeah.
You didn't get it, though, right?
Mm-mm.
And you haven't bought any of the Mario Legos.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
I don't have any Lego apart from one Overwatch Lego set.
So the way it works, the Lego community is very different. And I didn't know this. Years ago, probably about 15 years ago, I used to actually once a year buy a big Lego set and then put it together. It was actually, I was building a town. And it had like a green grocer, like the building was green. It was a grocery store, and it was like 3 levels. Then they had an apartment complex. Then they had like a shopping store, like an upscale shopping store, and they would actually connect and put together. Like you would build it, and then it had pieces that would snap them together. So you were building.
Oh, that's cool.
I had like a fire department, right? And I loved it. I loved doing it, and I stopped. But in that process of doing it, I learned that what happens is to become like a Lego engineer, what happens is Lego has a computer program that you can download for free.
Yeah.
And then you can actually build your own Lego sets.
Yeah.
Right?
And got like robots and stuff.
Well, it's crazy because you can actually like click pieces, right? And you can build this thing, and then when it's done, it tells you it counts the parts that you need, and then you can click a button and buy those parts from the website, and the parts will show up. But you could also do a thing where you could submit that thing to Lego, and then Lego will review it for the potential of making it an actual set later on.
Whoa.
And they will pay you for that. You'll get paid for that.
What?
I know, that's how I was when I first heard about it.
That's madness.
Then I realized I have no ability at all to build with Legos other than the predetermined sets. But there's a lot of people that really like build these. And what I learned is if you look at the boxes, there's a thing that'll say like creator. And the ones that say creator were actually made by a creator.